Good afternoon. The public hearing for the City Planning Commission is now called to order. Please turn the sound off on all cell phones and communication devices during the meeting. The City Planning Commission has established certain rules governing the procedures to be followed at public hearings. Before speaking, each person shall give their name, address, and state whom he or she is representing. Proponents for the proposal will speak for a period of 10 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents or other interested parties will speak for a period of 15 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Proponents will be allowed a period of 6 minutes for rebuttal. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents will not be allowed to rebut. No material, written matter, photographs, maps, etc. will be accepted by the Commission or its staff at any time during the public hearing. This procedure shall be followed except at such time when the presiding officer shall, with the approval of the Commission members present, extend such time. All proper and pertinent procedures shall be followed, including relevance of argument, recognition of speaker, and absolute prohibition of applause. All comments made by proponents and opponents shall be addressed to the chair or a specific member of the Commission. These hearings are recorded and broadcast on public access television. Audio tapes and all other relevant public records are available in the City Planning Office and may also be available at the city's website, www.nola.gov. Zoning docket 11517.
That was withdrawn by the applicant.
Okay, zoning docket 11517 has been withdrawn. We'll go to our second old business, zoning docket 00518.
Zoning docket 00518 is a request by City Council motion number M17558 for a zoning change from an H2B1A Historic Urban Neighborhood Business District to an H2MU Historic Urban Neighborhood Mixed Use District, and a conditional use for the retail sales of packaged alcoholic beverages on Square 204, Lot S41 in the 4th Municipal District bounded by Britannia, Josephine Coliseum, and St. Andrew Street. The municipal addresses are 2042 Britannia Street and 1457 Josephine Street. This is deferred from the January 9, 2018 City Planning Commission meeting. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject property to allow for a grocery store with 4,489 square feet of retail space on the first floor of a mixed-use building and allow for the retail sales of packaged alcohol.
Yeah, I can't hear either.
Those are working. You want to just give her mine? No. Mine, no. No? Right? Go ahead. Yeah.
Zoning docket 00518 is a request by City Council motion number M17558 for a zoning change from an HUB1A Historic Urban Neighborhood Business District to an HUMU Historic Urban Neighborhood Mixed Use District, and a conditional use for the retail sales of packaged alcoholic beverages on Square 204, Lot S41 in the 4th Municipal District, bounded by Britannia, Josephine, Coliseum, and St. Andrew Street. The municipal addresses are 2042 Britannia Street and 1457 Josephine Street. This is deferred from the January 9, 2018 City Planning Commission meeting. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject property to allow for a grocery store with 4,489 square feet of retail space on the first floor of a mixed-use building and allow for the retail sales of packaged alcohol. Historically, the property existed as Zara's supermarket with the retail sales of packaged alcohol. The grocery store closed and underwent major renovations, and the property lost its legal non-conforming use status to operate as a grocery store with packaged alcohol sales. The HUMU mixed-use district requested by the applicant does not meet all of the approval standards and is considered a spot zone and must meet the criteria for the Commission's spot zoning policy, which requires the applicant to seek the most restrictive zoning district, allowing neighborhood-oriented commercial use. The existing HUB1A district is the most restricted zoning district. The staff cannot support the zoning change to HUMU. The conditional use for the retail sales of packaged alcohol is predicated on the zoning change, so the staff cannot support the conditional use applications. At the last City Planning Commission meeting, the docket was deferred so the property owners could draw up a neighborhood agreement between the property owners and the neighbors. City Planning Commission staff did not review this agreement, as staff cannot require a good neighborhood agreement and cannot use a good neighborhood agreement when making a land use recommendation. For these reasons, staff still recommends denial of zoning docket 00518.
Thank you. I received 2 cards in support. First card I have is Ashley Davis.
Hi, my name is Ashley.
No.
Hi, my name is Ashley Davis. I'm 2131 Perdido Street, and I'm in support of Commissioner 2 Britannia, and I would like to defer my time to Nicole Weber.
Hello, can you hear me back there?
Yeah.
No one else is there. Okay. Can y'all hear me now? No? Okay, well, I'll just speak very loudly. My name is Nicole Weber, address 2348 St. Thomas, New Orleans 70130, and 2131 Bienville Street, 70112. I represent the applicants who previously came before the City Planning Commission. For those of you who weren't here on the City Planning Commission several months ago, several of the commission members had asked that we come back, if we had come to the commission with a conditional use application to allow for the retail food store to have packaged liquor, that it would have been considered unlikely approved. Then in going to City Council, Councilmember Cantrell heard the concerns of the neighbors that were concerned about HUMU allowing for short-term rentals as a permitted use. So she put this motion in to allow us time to go through the process, work on a good neighbor agreement with the neighbors to address any of their concerns with the short-term rental portion. And she also proposed a second motion that was asking the commission to consider, it would pass at the last meeting, to consider making conditional use for short-term rental under HUMU and HUT1. So we're here today because my clients purchased the property as a former's heirs. As you can see, it's been through a great deal of renovations. The renovation timeline is very specific. They lost their legal non-conforming use during this process when they were going through HDLC approval, planning approval, plan review, and they had to come back several times to the city to get different types of permits. As they renovated the building, it was almost like peeling back an onion. The more that they peeled back, the more they discovered structural issues and other issues. And that's properly documented on the city record in terms of their permitting process. So the loss of the legal non-conforming use for the grocery store with packaged liquor was not an intentional process. It was one that happened due to the renovations to the property and waiting on approvals. So that's why we come before you here today, just asking to return the property to its previous use under the HUMU with a conditional use that's required in order to sell alcohol and so they can have a tenant. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers, any other cards in support of this document? If not, we'll turn to the opposition. First card I have is Stephen Queller.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
I think you're gonna have to either raise it or hold it up to you or have a seat.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Stephen Kreller. I own a property.
Please state your name and your address as well.
Stephen Kreller, 2111 Perdido Street. My wife and I both own we own a property patty corner to this property at issue here, which I think one of the main issues, which I think needs to be clear, is that we have been working with this property owner, and the request for deferral at the last hearing, the request was made by the property owner, the developer, to work on a good neighbor agreement. We have sent this property owner and their representative a draft good neighbor agreement in early December. We have heard nothing. In fact, the first time she called me was yesterday about 4:00 p.m. So that is a huge issue, and I know you're not here to discuss a GNA or to review a GNA, but our GNA addresses much more than just the short-term rentals, commercial STRs. It also addresses the alcohol sales. Should your commission decide to grant that conditional use, which we don't feel is appropriate. In fact, nothing's really changed since the last time this commission has ruled on this issue. You heard this issue. The CPC staff issued a very lengthy report making a recommendation. You all accepted that recommendation in a 5-0 decision, and nothing's changed. So for all of those reasons and the objections that are on NOLA One Stop, we feel that we support the CPC staff report in your previous decision denying this leapfrog and zoning request that they're now asking you to do. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Next speaker, Barbara Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Barbara Fitzgerald. I live at 722 Erskine's Avenue, and I'm here again to represent the Henry Howard Hotel, which is directly across the street from the property in question. And as you may remember, our family-owned boutique hotel, which just has 18 rooms, is an 1860s historic building that needed much loving care when we purchased it. And we did work hard within the 6-month requirement to maintain our legal non-conforming use. We are currently zoned 2-family residential, and the applicants were zoned 2-family residential, not MU, when they purchased that property and had a conditional use for a grocery store with alcohol sales. They failed to keep their conditional use, but they were recently granted a spot zone change from the 2-family residential zone to the HUB1A. We support the board's previous recommendation in favor of the HUB1A over HUMU, and now support the staff recommendation to again deny the most intensive zone change to MU that would be detrimental to the neighboring property owners. Our concerns are not about the proposed grocery store, but are about the potential permitted and conditional uses, and it is not in the spirit of the CBO to zone for packaged alcohol, especially in a residential district. What might happen in the future if we end up with MU, packaged alcohol, and a failed grocery store. Neighboring properties are being asked to pay the price for the applicant's investment and development decisions. If the grocery store tenant is not tenable, surely the applicants can duplicate the successes of other establishments like a coffee shop, bakery, or restaurant that could serve alcohol on the premises. A good example is a similar corner property that you are probably aware of in the Lower Garden District at Thalia and Constance Streets that was recently rezoned from 2-family residential to HUB1A and will be opening a restaurant this year. So in summary, we are encouraged by the staff recommendations to keep the HUB1A and hope the Commission will go along with it.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzgerald. Next speaker, Martin Mannion. And we have 2 additional minutes from Michael and Vincent. So I recognize you for 4 minutes.
Is this one working? It's working. Okay, my name is Martin Mannion, and my address is 2105 Perdido Street. I live directly catty corner from this building on Britannia. And I'm here today in opposition of the zone change application for this property to MU. I think for those of us that have read and studied the staff recommendation, it's quite thorough. And I would like to just point out really quickly a number of items that I think are key in this decision and debate. The MU district is less appropriate than the current B1A zoning, as it is indeed considered a spot zone. The term spot zone and spot zoning refer to changes which have the effect of singling out a single property in lieu of other properties or surrounding parcels which do not get the same designation. So this zoning change that's requested.
Anyone here in support of this document of 15017? The applicant present? If not, we'll move to opposition. Forgive me, but I can barely read it. Maddie Wambley? Wamble.
Maddie Wamble, 4800 Redwood Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70126. I'm here in opposition of the re-subdivision of the lot 4859 Redwood Drive. Previously, as you heard, the staff had recommended a denial for this lot to be subdivided because it did not meet all of the requirements in depth and in width. The proposed lot would not constitute a general improvement of the original plat and would subdivide a lot that currently complies with the area requirements of the CZO. Staff states that the subdivision would not meet the requirements of a SRD district for two-family dwellings of 5,000 square feet. The houses on Linwood Drive have a typical 70-foot wide, whereas if you subdivide the lot into two lots, with each of those lots having 50 feet each on the front, this would not be typical of the 70-foot wide lots on the other properties on Linwood Drive. The plan is to reconfigure, according to staff, so that the applicant could place a two-family building and a one-family building on the lots 14A and 14B subdivided. The staff reports they denied the request primarily before because there was an alternative configuration, and that was it that I just said. They're going to put a two-family residence plus a one-family residence on this lot. So the staff has recommended tentative approval of the subdivision with some provisos, about 4, as he said. Most lots on Linwood Drive measure 70 feet wide and 85 feet in depth. The lots along Linwood Drive are very uniform, with 84% of the lots measuring between 70 and 79 feet wide, and 89% containing areas between 5,000 and 8,799 square feet. No lot.
That concludes your time unless another commissioner has a question for you.
Okay. Well, can I just say I request that you deny this?
I think you have a question. Well, go ahead and finish. I don't want to
Okay, thank you. Measure between 70 and 71 feet wide, and 89% of containing areas between 5,000 and 8,799 square feet. No lot on the street have widths less than 58 feet, and only 5 lots contain an area less than 5,000 feet. And I can turn to these 5 homes in 4 two-bedroom homes and 1 single-family home. The proposal to subdivide the lots into lot 14A, 14B would be deficient in lot area and lot width. So even with this reconfiguration of the lot presented to applicant to place a one-family house on part of the lot and a two-family house on the other part, the staff recommended tentative approval with 4 provisos that the applicant must meet before being approved. The applicant still needs waivers from the Board of Zoning for a waiver of lot gap on the subdivision. I'm requesting this proposal be denied in place and to consider placing 2 housing units on 1 lot of record that primarily a 2-family structure was on the lot and destroyed by Katrina event should not be approved. To place 4 families on this lot deprives the family of green space. It increases density from 2 families to 4 families, alters the quality of life, alters the layout of Lindenwood Drive. 1 lot, 1 house. In my opinion, this is a monetary reward for the applicant owner and no concern for the families residing, health, welfare. Please deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in opposition to this docket matter? If not, then we'll close the public hearing portion of this docket.
I just have a question. I guess it's for staff. Just curious, in light of there being opposition, did we know the applicant was not going to be present? Was he notified?
The applicant was notified, and he stated that he would be present for the hearing.
Thank you.
So I have a question for staff also. So did I understand you to say that these lots are not deficient under the code?
So the lots would be, or at least, well, 1 lot would be deficient in depth. So all the lots along Lindenwood Drive are 85 feet in depth, which is a condition that they all have. By subdividing this, since lot depth is the average distance between the front and rear lot lines, one of the lots that would be created would be more deficient, or have a greater deficiency in depth than it does currently. So it would need a variance. What the staff worked on with the applicant was to reconfigure the lot so that there would not need to be lot area waivers, because the original proposal would have been under the requirements for lot area. So now with the reconfiguration, the lots would meet the width and the area requirements of CZO, but would still need to obtain that lot depth variance from the BZA.
So if we were to grant the application, the applicant still has to go before BZA for a waiver?
Correct.
Okay. And then the issue about 1 versus 2 family, is that?
The original proposal was for 2 2-family homes. But again, in conversation with the applicant, we told the applicant that, this would make both lots deficient in that area. And that there was a configuration where they could have 1 single-family home and 1 2-family home, and those be compliant with the lot area requirements. And that's what the applicant changed them to be. So the proposal currently is for 1 single-family home and 1 2-family home.
And does the 2-family home require any other BZA or other approval, or is that of right under the applicable zone?
The use is by right, so that would be a permitted use. And the applicant did not submit any, plans, building plans, so I don't know about any other variances that might be required for that.
Are there any other questions from any other commissioners?
Mr. Chair, the concern that I have is with regards to the opposition is that previously both lots were nearly 4,900 square feet or more as opposed to 5,000. So we're technically talking about less than 100 square feet in terms of overall square footage. The applicant worked with the City Planning Commission, and to be very honest with you, I think that in this particular instance, we're talking about 1 more family that would reside at that location versus the 2 that would be allowed at present. So with that in mind, and also there's one other concern that I have, which is a big concern. All the lots on Lynn Huber happen to be 70 feet with the exception of 5, but that is not because of city requirements. That is because simply that is the way that they were designed. So there are some that have less than 70 feet frontage. So in this particular instance, keeping in mind that the planning, that the staff has done a tremendous job analyzing the facts and working with the owner, I move for the acceptance of staff's recommendation of tentative approval on subdivision docket 15017.
It's been moved by Commissioner Green and seconded by Commissioner Steve. Seconded by Commissioner Brown. Any other discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Zoning docket 01018.
Request at 2126 Constant Street LLC for conditional use to permit a neighborhood commercial establishment in an HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district on square 108, lot 10-A in the 4th Municipal District, bounded by Constant Street, Laurel Street, Josephine Street, and Jackson Avenue. The municipal addresses are 2126, 2128 Constant Street. The petition site is developed with a one-story, 1,080 square feet residential structure that had been converted to non-residential use as a daycare center in 1997. There are no proposed increase to the building footprint. However, minor interior and exterior modifications are proposed. The applicant intends to renovate and utilize the commercial space as a box and class studio, which according to the comprehensive zoning ordinance is classified as an art studio. This use is recognized as permitted within the neighborhood commercial establishment designation. However, neighborhood commercial establishments are conditional uses in the HURD2 district. Due to the structure's original construction and use as a residence, the proposal does not meet all of the use standards for neighborhood commercial establishment under Article 20, Section 20.3.8 and neighborhood commercial establishment. The neighborhood establishment designation was created to allow for the future commercial use of structures in residential neighborhoods that were originally constructed and used for neighborhood serving commercial purposes, such as corner store type structures. The use standards reflect this orientation toward commercial structures. The existing structure is residential in its original design, despite having been used as a non-residential space for part of its history, and is therefore not compliant with the use standards for neighborhood commercial establishments. Therefore, staff cannot support the request.
Thank you. The first speaker we have in support of this document is Alex Hackle, and you will be given 6 minutes because we have 2 people seeking the time to you. So you have six minutes.
Thank you. My name is Alex Hackle. My address is 412 North Miro, and I'm the applicant. And I'm representing New Orleans Boxing Club. And I just want to say that I appreciate the staff's work and everything they've done. And when I looked at this property to purchase it, I looked at the best use for the neighborhood. And where it's situated, located, it's 1 block off of Magazine. And it's directly behind Franco's Athletic Club. There's a yoga studio, martial arts studio, and Franco's and Pilates studio, basically on the block right above, right on the street. And when I looked at the code, I saw that it met all of the requirements, and I think that the first portion that we're being denied on, which is the existing structure being non-residential in its original construction, that is, they're looking back at the 1800 Sanborn maps and saying that this is a 2-family residential structure. Well, if you look at some of the history of the building and the staff's report, you can notice that in looks like in 1929 the property was actually zoned commercial, and something that was not included in the report was the abstract information that was provided when purchasing the property, and that in 1967 was actually owned by the Catholic Church, and it may have been operating as a daycare there during that period of time. We're not certain because there's really not a good record to indicate that. But if you look at the property on the inside, you can notice that I know it's hard to see because we don't have a picture here. It is built out with a commercial sprinkler system, commercial handles, commercial doors, commercial. Everything inside of this building is 100% commercial. And you even have an awning outside that's commercial. You have a sign that's been put outside of the building. And, you know, a daycare today is not really needed in this neighborhood. And I don't think that it fits the neighborhood characteristics today, considering that, you know, it's changed dramatically. You have Franco's and Pilates and some of these other athletic, you know, and art studios around the corner. One thing I do want to say is the staff did also indicate that it wasn't going to have an impact on the traffic, because what we're proposing here is a class-only studio with 12 to 15 people instructed by a professional or amateur boxer or trainer, which is something that's very unique to not only just New Orleans, but in the country right now. And it's part of a grander mission to bring boxing back in New Orleans, and it really fits the characteristics of this neighborhood because it's geared towards people who don't actually want to fight and they don't want to learn how to box, but they want to stay fit and they want to know how to protect themselves. And one of the problems is, if you go to a Franco's or any one of these cookie cutter gyms or athletic clubs, you're taught this skill from someone who got an online certification. And I'll be honest with you, that's really not going to help you if you're, you know, if you're trying to defend yourself, if you're in a situation. We all know how New Orleans is. If everyone is a resident here. It is a violent city, and I think this is something that the city needs, and it doesn't. And the way that we're trying to provide it is a unique way that's tasteful and fits within the neighborhood. And that's something that I looked at when purchasing the property. Is you have 4 different fitness establishments around the corner, so it doesn't really. And actually, another one opened a couple blocks away down the street in Jackson, a boxing gym. And this is not a high traffic, you know, high density use. We're only going to have 12 people for the majority of the classes, but we're going to be able to provide a specific class that we've kind of originated, which is a 12-round class. It's going to teach people how to use every different part of their body in a way to defend themselves and also to stay fit. Another thing that the staff noted in the report was that it would have a positive effect on the neighborhood. There are some dilapidated houses, and I mean, just the other day you got people drinking and all kinds of nasty stuff all over the steps. This is going to help put this property into commerce, and because it's so small and it doesn't have the cost to convert it would be really difficult, and it may not be a profitable venture, and it can sit here and stay vacant for many years, or it might end up, might have to be a short-term rental, because that's the only thing that can actually bring in that type of revenue to make the project work. The renovations are basically minor. That's another thing. We're not changing the structure, and we meet all of the requirements except for number 1, which we're looking back at the existing 1800 Sanborn map, and in the 1800s. I think that is something that this committee should take a look at and realize that today we're living in 2018 and the uses and communities have changed to the point where this is something that is needed. A couple other points that I had were that it is a low density project. Basically we're done here. I think that this is something that the staff needs to look at a little bit deeper than the superficial, strict interpretation of a map that doesn't really look like the neighborhood today. And it was used as commercial for much of its existence, and as early as 1929 it was on commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the time. Next speaker, Susie. Susie. If not, any other speakers speaking in support of this documentary? If not, I have a few information cards. Julie Simpson.
Morning again, Julie Simpson. I'm the chairperson for zoning and Boston Store Association. It's the Lower Garden District is our founders and our purview. I am not in here in support or opposition. My concern is just that we started getting a lot of emails from concerned neighbors around this who this kind of caught them off guard. It seems like maybe some notice was not given. We didn't get notice. And also, I'm a close neighbor, so I also didn't notice that there was a sign posted on this building about the requested zoning change until a few days ago. So we wanted to see if we might be able to ask to defer this until the next meeting so that we can meet with the property owners or the people who are proposing the boxing gym before a decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Love.
Catherine Love, 1244 Magazine, also at Coliseum Square, just reiterating the same thing. Somehow we missed notice or never saw the sign, so we're just asking if we could have time to speak to the neighbors, because we can't represent something we didn't know about.
Jane Murdoch.
I just bought the building across the street, which I'll be renovating. It's been abandoned, and I believe was one of the buildings you discussed. I'm a little concerned. There is zero parking already on the street. I have no idea how this is going to accommodate one car, much less 12. There are 5 single-family buildings and a senior facility right next door that has a heavy pickup and drop-off. And I'm from the LGD. We always need a daycare, so frankly, a daycare is more suitable to the neighborhood, in my opinion. But I'm obviously I just found this out, but how I feel now is kind of against it, but I think it should be deferred to later. Because none of the neighbors seem to really know much about this, and this is a pretty big use of change. When frankly, we have 2 white houses across the street, and we're required to bring them back to the residential. I mean, I'd love to have a bar and a strip club, but that's not appropriate in that stuff. So, I just, I'm not asking for a zoning thing.
Please address the commission.
So, I'd ask either this be deferred or be denied, because I don't think the block can support it. And I don't know if I would have purchased my house had I known this was going to happen right across the street.
Thank you. Any other speakers who would like to speak for information purposes only? If not, we'll move to the opposition. First opposition, William Southern.
Good afternoon. I'm Billy Southern. I'm the owner with my wife of the property 933 Jackson, which is actually the house that extends, I guess, in the back of that kind of alleyway between the other 2 houses. So I'm that 3rd house. I was unaware of this proposal until I saw it on the calendar. I queried a number of my neighbors, including the representatives from the CSA, to determine if they had received notice. My CSA, as they've said, they didn't receive notice. I didn't receive a notice card, and other neighbors I talked to did not. I did speak with one neighbor who did receive a card. So it could be the vagaries of the United States Postal Service. But in any event, I would also request that the matter be deferred. I'm not closed-minded to this necessarily, but I'm concerned, and I feel like I don't have enough information. In the event that it wasn't deferred, in lieu of deferring it, I'd request that it be denied. This house has incredibly strong resident value and use as a residential property. It's a block from Magazine Street, actually in a highly desirable neighborhood. This is not a rundown neighborhood. Someone would want to buy this property and restore it. The fact that there are rundown properties across the street, Ms. Murdoch actually purchased the house across the street, which has been blighted for decades, not because of an unwillingness to restore it, but because it was tied up in a succession that prevented the city from repossessing it. This is a high-density block. Jackson Avenue is already a tied block full of cars and parking, both from the commercial establishments on Magazine Street, but also because it's a residential neighborhood. This is actually an unusually high-density residential neighborhood block because of the high-rise, which is an old orphanage that was turned. In any event, I request that it be deferred, and if not deferred, denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Andrea Bland.
Hi, I'm Andrea Bland. I live at 1216 Jackson Avenue. I didn't know anything about this either. I'm 3 blocks away, so maybe I'm out of the zone of notice. But I would ask for a deferment as well. I think it needs more time to be studied, and actually I think it could be restored as a beautiful residential house. That's pretty much what I do. So I think the other uses.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers in opposition to this document? If not, the applicant has time for rebuttal.
I'm sorry for those people who didn't get the notification. I sent it out to everybody on the list. I did notice that some were returned. I don't know if that was the post office or what was going on. But what I can say is when we did this, when we first looked at this and tried to embark on this journey of making this part of our organization, we looked at the parking because that's something not just that affects the neighborhood, of course, but it also affects the business. If people can't park, they're not going to be able to come. But what we noticed is that with all of the high dense businesses that are complementary to this, this is going to be an added part of Franco's in many regards. We're just teaching boxing classes, boxing specific, and we're only having 12 people per class, and we're spreading them out during the day. Where the first class starts at 6 in the morning, and we actually stop classes at 11, and then for towards the afternoon. So we missed a lot of the lunchtime traffic and things of that nature, where you would have probably maybe a little increased demand for parking. We don't see there being a great added amount of traffic for our organization because we only are going to have 12 people in the building at one time and an instructor. Also, a lot of people are biking, walking that area, and this is geared towards people in that community. We want to be able to provide the type of service where we can offer, professional fitness and training classes that are geared towards boxing specific. Another part of this is something I didn't mention earlier. The trainers and coaches that are going to be teaching this are going to be professional amateur boxers, and also people that we and coaches, and also members who are brought up through our nonprofit that we have in Mid-City, and it's going to be a great opportunity for different socioeconomic backgrounds to meet and to really kind of create that Creole experience that New Orleans is. So I think it really kind of serves and fits within the fabric of what New Orleans stands for. That's all I can say.
I have a question. I think we heard virtually from every neighbor that spoke that they're at least willing to have an open mind. They just don't feel like they have enough information and have the opportunity to engage with you. Virtually everybody that spoke in favor of a deferment. Would you be open to a deferment?
Absolutely. I mean, we'd be open for a deferment. We started this process in September, so it's actually taken a while, and we missed the first of the year, so it's not going to be a fitness time for us to sign up people. So yes.
Question for staff. Our February meeting is February
6th.
February 6th.
So if we defer this until March, would that cause any issues?
There's 2 February meetings. There's February 6th and February 23rd or 27th, one of the 2.
But we do
So there's 2 options.
May I also ask a question? If we did defer it, how are we going to be able to contact, what are we going to be able to do to explain what we're trying to propose a little bit better? Because if we do defer it, if nothing is done between then, I don't know if we'll be in a good position.
What the staff did walking through
Yeah, Sabine can meet with you, and I'd be happy to as well. But essentially, we can use that period to have conversation about why our recommendation is what it is, and debate it, and discuss it. And you can also use that opportunity to reach out to neighbors. It sounds like we're hearing about this for perhaps the first time, and that might be a good opportunity to make sure everyone's on the same page as to what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. I'd also work with Coliseum Square. It seems like the mailing list didn't work. And I don't, did you have an NPP meeting?
Yeah, we had the NPP meeting. We started the process in September. We sent out all of the letters, and we showed up for our meeting time. And we had one person show up.
So I think I would use them there. A second version of that NPP that are sent.
Have a motion. I move that we defer this matter until the second meeting in February.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Hughes, second by Commissioner Weaver. Any other discussion?
I have a question. My question for the staff is, if it seems that in the report, I'm just not clear on what's going to be accomplished during this period of deferral, because what cure is there to the inconsistency with the master plan that we can?
Well, I don't know if the time will change our recommendation. There's that one specific standard that is not met because of the original structure being original in the residence.
It sounded like he might have some materials to bring to that issue, but
I mean, it seems to me that the request for referral is made primarily to have an opportunity to meet with the neighbors. And I think Stephen had offered to meet with the applicant, just in the course of, that's what we usually do. If we get a request to meet with them, we're happy to do so.
And first, may I ask, to clarify, is it currently still the child care center that we see in our package?
It is vacant currently.
Yeah, but it still has the signs for child care center. I mean, as I said at previous meetings, there's sort of this gray area.
Yes, and so there is this statement in the master plan designation that states that those conditional use technically are meant to apply to corner stores or structures that are originally commercial in nature. And that's the way, as staff, we have interpreted it in the past. However, it has happened as well that the planning commissioners have disagreed with that interpretation on other cases.
Right.
So
I mean, I understand that gray area. And this is pre-existing as a commercial use in the same category that applicant wants to do commercial use. So I would just say for the record, or even sort of have talking to Kelly, Commissioner Brown as well, that I'm always inclined, if there has been a pre-existing use and it can be done without change in zoning, that if somebody can get general support from the neighborhood, I would be in favor of it. I say that only because I would love you all to try to work with them, even though technically it's neither on a corner nor does it have the internal construction that would have made it that way. But it clearly has been in commercial use, and I think it's generally good for the city and neighborhoods to have things that have been in commercial use and fit in to remain so if it doesn't require a zoning change and it's something the neighbors accept. I'm just saying that for the statement.
Any other questions or comments from any other commissioners? If not, there's a motion for deferral. Commissioner Hughes. I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next zoning docket 01118.
Zoning docket 1118 is a request for a zoning change from an HU-RN1 historic urban multifamily residential district to an HU-B1 historic urban neighborhood business district. The petition property is located on Square 243, Lot A in the 4th Municipal District, bounded by Jackson Avenue, Carondelet Street, Brainerd Street, and Phillip Street. The municipal addresses are 1700 and 1706 Jackson Avenue. The site is developed with a two-story single-family dwelling. According to historic sandboard maps, the subject property was originally developed with a single-family residence and has been a single-family residence since. The applicant is seeking a zoning change that the building may be utilized as a commercial short-term rental. The site is currently within an HURM1 historic urban multifamily residential district, which does not permit commercial short-term rentals. The applicant proposes to rezone the site to an HUB1 neighborhood business district, which would permit a variety of commercial uses, including commercial short-term rentals. The staff does not support the application, as it would be inappropriate for this property to have a commercial zoning. The master plan designates the property as residential pre-war medium density future land use designation, which allows residential uses primarily and commercial uses only of structures that were historically used commercially. Based on this designation, the property cannot be zoned commercially. The subject property is residential in its construction and does not have a history of commercial uses. In addition, the rezoning of only this residential structure, which would unjustifiably treat it differently from similarly situated residences on the square, would be a spot zone that is not allowable under the historic non-conforming use policy. The request does not meet the standards of zoning change approval set forth in Article 4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Therefore, staff recommends denial of zoning docket 1118.
Thank you. First call in support, Bob Ellis. I have 2 cards that are seated to you, so you have a total of 6 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Bob Ellis on behalf of the applicant, Christian Galvin. My address is 650 Boyer Street, 2615, zip code 70130. This request, as you heard, is to change the zoning to HUB1 for the purpose of being able to operate a commercial short-term rental. The history of the building is significant consideration, and with all due respect to the staff report, it's missed quite a few things on the uses of the property. For the last 40 years, the property has been occupied by transient residents. In fact, even though it's not part of the report, I bring some plans, I'll supplement our application with this. But this is a plans of blueprints from 1977, and it's alterations and renovations to the Marist Collegiate Community House of Studies for the Marist Society of Louisiana Inc. In other words, the property actually has been used for commercial use, but I'm going to get to that more specifically in a second. The mansion was actually built in 1916 by the Cullen family. The original home consisted of a main residence, a staff apartment, and a family apartment for the Cullen brother. In 1917, their daughter was born in the mansion, and she would continue to live in the mansion for the majority of her life. She was married in the Paula rooms, and the family name changed to Palmer. The Palmer family continues to reside in New Orleans and actually visits the home annually. Later, the home was sold to the Marist Society, and they began commercial renovation of the mansion to a rectory for their school in New Orleans. The new rectory had 13 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, and accommodated visiting priests and teachers. When the school closed, the nuns moved in, and for 8 years it was a shelter for women in need. When the shelter closed, the mansion was converted to a retirement home for the Marist priests. Eventually, the Marist offices in D.C. decided that it needed to sell the asset. This is when my client, Christian Galvin, purchased the home in 2012. He restored the home down to 4 units while maintaining commercial structure elements of the Marist expansion. Christian embarked on a cosmetic renovation of the mansion, maintaining commercial installations of HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and firewalls. The home was then fully furnished, and select units rented to Hollywood South. When Hollywood South reduced its presence in Louisiana, Christian began renting the units as vacation rentals as the most productive use of the mansion. The mansion had been featured in the New York Times, the Huffington Post, Travel and Leisure for its quintessential New Orleans design. It's notable at the neighborhood participation meeting, there wasn't a single business or person who came forward in opposition to this application. In addressing one of the staff's concerns regarding the
Anyone in the audience, I think that you give the speaker respect and not necessarily making the comments out loud.
In addressing one of the staff's points regarding the HU1B1 zoning, Christians willing accept the proviso that the commercial zoning is limited specifically to short-term rental operations, which it's been consistently used for 40 years. That's really all I have. Unless you have the applicant wants to speak, I can reserve my time for the fun.
Any questions for the speakers?
Sometimes it happens in the city that uses happen without permits, but it doesn't necessarily justify that that was the way it was supposed to have been used. Were permits in place for all those uses that you're discussing?
I don't have that.
It's an important consideration. I understand that throughout the city, I'm not going to take a position on it one way or the other, but when those examples are used, for the record, it's important to look up, in my opinion, whether permits were granted.
Well, I would agree with you, but the staff didn't even pick up on it was actually used for commercial, and these are plans that we just found. I mean, I have to believe they were on file at some point. But whether the city maintained the permits dating back to 1977, I don't know.
Can we just concede that retired marists, priests, and nuns in short-term rentals are not the same and consistent use across 40 years?
I don't know. You're asking, the law was actually originally about transient individuals, people that live there for less than 30 days. They would come and go. What's the difference between a person that lives there for 30 days, whether they're a priest or whether they're Hollywood?
I don't think they came and went. I mean, as a retiring community, I'm going to make some assumptions, but I would think they were there for you're conflating it that for 40 years it's the same use, and I'm arguing that when it's owned by the mayors, it's
still a commercial utility. As long as you'll concede that, I'm fine.
Well, I'm just contesting your statement. So, thank you.
Okay, are there any other speakers in support of this document? Are there any other speakers in support of this document? If not, we'll move to the opposition. First call I have is Aaron Holmes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Aaron Holmes, speaking on behalf of the Preservation Resource Center. Today, there are 3 separate applications to spot zone residential properties into commercial parcels solely to accommodate commercial short-term rentals. As detailed in the staff assessment, these rezones undermine the intent of the new short-term rental ordinances to restrict high-intensity, year-round short-term rentals to commercial corridors while limiting them and their associated adverse effects in residential areas. These increasing applications are largely indicative of an inappropriate commercial creep into residential zones and are inconsistent with the goals and spirit of the master plan. Furthermore, when short-term rentals have reached their maximum capacity in the city, which is bound to happen at some point, these properties will maintain their less restrictive zoning, permanently allowing a wider variety of commercial uses in areas and structures that have no history of such use. Please support the meticulous work that went into the CZOA master plan and uphold the residential character of our neighborhoods by denying this and similar applications, and acknowledge that the frequency of these requests points to the necessity of a thorough reevaluation of our entire short-term rental ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Next speaker, Bill
Sawicki. Close enough. Bill Sawicki, 2311 Chippewa Street. A simple search on Airbnb yields no fewer than 39 other whole home short-term rentals within 2 blocks of this location in a residential neighborhood. Recently, I've had to follow several spot zoning requests that would allow similar small hotels in or around my residential neighborhood. In one case, the staff report justified its approval by stating that this would have no effect on the city as a whole. That is a direct quote. Maybe one of these small hotels would have no effect, but this would be the 6th such small hotel on track for approval in or around my neighborhood since the short-term rental regulations were passed. Collectively, the approval of so many small hotels in residential zones will have tremendous long-term negative impacts on the residential character of our historic neighborhoods. By their very nature, their occupants are transient. They're just here to have a good time. And this doesn't begin to touch on the negative effect these residential to hotel conversions will have on the supply of affordable housing. I strongly urge you to truly preserve the historic nature of this residential neighborhood and deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jenna Burke.
I'm Jennifer, 903
Laurel Street, 9036 Street. I'm sorry, I've moved anyhow. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a lifelong District B resident and for nobody else. Just basically, you can see here and you can see by the zoning map that the staff report is excellent and correct. This lot is squarely situated in a residential zone. Any nearby commercial properties and the stretch of an excuse that there were some transient, religious people there is invalid. Any other nearby commercial structures, front St. Charles Avenue, this commercial creep, especially in a changing and fragile central city, is not good for the neighborhood or the city as a whole. With a history of floating the rules, as short-term rentals have not been legal until recently, and trying to prove a history of use in order to get rewarded for something that has been illegal doesn't seem to be a good idea. There's nothing special about this application that should warrant special treatment. This is an ideal candidate for a denial. Approval of this would open the floodgates to investors who see that the city's rules mean nothing in the face of unfettered commercialization of our irreplaceable neighborhoods. Zoning is forever. This damaging endeavor is not. Staff reports have been consistent in their clear evidence for denial. We sincerely hope that you will maintain that consistency by voting to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Next speaker, Ella Cambernbeck.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm representing Felicity Redevelopment at 1139 OC Philly. We are a neighborhood organization in Central City that promotes the creation and support of neighbors. And spot zoning does exactly the opposite. We feel that the request to change this zoning from residential to commercial simply for the purpose of operating short-term rentals is a blatant disregard for the residents in the neighborhood. Like Jenna said, Central City is a delicate neighborhood. There's a lot of potential there for people to come and make it home. There's also a lot of potential for short-term rentals and spot zones to pop up and empty our streets of active neighbors. So we urge you to support the staff report and deny this.
Thank you. Next speaker is Shelley Landry. And as you're coming, I have a card from Jacob Gardner ceding time to either you or Andrea Bland. So I'm going to ask Jacob who he wants to see this time.
Jacob is gone. Thank you. I'm Shelley Landry, representing the Garden District Association, 5329 Drive. And again, reiterate what's already been said, but you can tell that our neighborhood associations have been pretty busy with Irish Channel and Coliseum Square and PRC and the Central City Group. And if y'all have been around for a while, you know how strongly the Garden District felt about short-term rentals and how much we were opposed to them and how much we feared the commercial encroachment. And this is exactly what's happening now, is that you've got basically corporations coming in and purchasing older homes and trying to turn them into a commercial establishments for short-term rentals for their own gain, nothing to give back to the neighborhood. And you'll see, I think there are 4 on the agenda today that you will see, and 2 in our neighborhood, and that we are all opposed to. So we all fear this, and it's been sort of an invasion and sort of degradation of the neighborhood. And we have worked too long and too hard to sort of sit by and let this happen. So we're asking for y'all to please wake up. I know most of you are awake, but some of you are not, and we need you to oppose this short-term invasion into our neighborhood. Thank you.
Who's asleep down there?
Andrea Bland.
As far as I know, you're awake.
I think.
It's warm in here.
Hi, my name is Andrea Bland. I live at 1216 Jackson Avenue, a few blocks down from this beautiful house. I did go to the neighborhood participation meeting and walk the house, and it's very lovely and it's very large, and it can accommodate right now in its current state 24 short-term rental guests. 24. None of them will drive cars up insured. I don't believe that. But this is an intensification in this neighborhood that is very undesirable. If the zoning is allowed, it will allow it to operate 365 days a year times 24 residents potentially coming in and out of this neighborhood. It is very detrimental to the fabric of the neighborhood. I ask you to oppose it. We've seen it all. We're surrounded by short-term rental, old houses that are being bought up by people as investors to maximize their return. These are not voters, these are not neighbors, these are not people that you get to know and who walk their dogs. I mean, these are people that will come and go, and they add nothing to the neighborhood. So please oppose.
Support unhistoric neighborhoods.
It's what I think is the most important job that you have.
Thank you. William Southern.
Hello again, Billy Southern, 933 Jackson Avenue. My primary interest in this property is, again, as a Jackson Avenue homeowner. I bought my home on Jackson Avenue. It's a big old New Orleans house that I endeavored to restore and keep up in hopes that, you know, other neighboring properties would get restored and families would move in, and I'd have, you know, there would be a community where there was a lot of light, and that actually in large measure has happened. You know, there's a lot of success, I think, in that respect. But really this STR development on Jackson Avenue, I think, represents a tipping point from where this neighborhood went from being, you know, a residential community filled with, you know, different kinds of people, renters, homeowners, families, to really being primarily vacationers. I think it's worth noting that the applicant for this property is also the applicant for another large historic property on Jackson Avenue, which is item 016/18 on today's docket, which is 919/21 Jackson Avenue. That's actually the property next to my house on 33 Jackson Avenue. Very much opposed to that as well. And actually it becomes, this is the slippery slope, right? You know, if this one gets it, well, why wouldn't the one at 919 Jackson get it? And if these two get it, why wouldn't every other homeowner on Jackson Avenue do the same thing? So I just think that it becomes a point where there's really no principled way to parse, you know, why Mr. Gavin should get this for this property and the others without really opening the door to, you know, everyone else on Jackson Avenue and the surrounding neighborhood doing the same thing. Which would have a seriously negative impact on my personal quality of life and, you know, my investment, not just financial investment, but, you know, real investment of myself and my family in my community. So I couldn't be more strong in opposing this. I would also note that I submitted a letter on behalf of my 12 members of the 900 block of Jackson Avenue who uniformly oppose this request. Rather, these requests.
Thank you. Captain Love.
Catherine Love again, 1244 Magazine Street still. So I am one of those, I'm speaking on behalf of myself right now. This is outside of our world, but it's inside my New Orleans world. I am one of those people that do not approve short-term rentals. The short-term rental done right, this is the type of short-term rentals that makes it everybody scared and goes against a correctly done short-term rental. This isn't somebody who has a double-sided, you know, a shotgun, who's a student or a teacher or a police officer and renting out the other side so that he can keep his property up and pay bills. This isn't somebody that has a guest house in the back and is renting out short-term rentals on the typical 90 days a year type situation. This is a guy that's going to the city, buying beautiful homes and doing a great job, and you have to give him credit for that. And instead of putting, I don't know, 6 long-term apartments in that place and providing us with more rental and improving our city, he wants to throw 24 short-term rentals, make the biggest profit he can make, and go live in Covington, Metairie, wherever the hell he lives. So I'm strictly opposed to this because this is what makes short-term rentals bad, makes everybody angry about them, and then takes away the right from the grandmas and the school teachers and the other people that do it correctly so that we can improve. I go Airbnb when I go to a city because I like to be in the neighborhoods, but that is detrimental to our neighborhoods. It takes away the character of New Orleans and will keep people from coming to us.
Thank you. Next speaker, Julie Simpson.
Julie Simpson, 1332 Magazine Street. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and of the Coliseum Square Association, although as a general rule, we are against spot zoning in our neighborhood. I think, well, I concur with all of the previous speakers, but I think it should also be pointed out that it's often an excuse for people who come before you and ask for zoning changes that they put a lot of money into their property, or they've spent X amount of dollars on it, and so that's one of the reasons they should get commercial zoning or special use or whatever. And I think pretty much everybody in the realms has spent money on their property, relevant to how much money they could spend. And that's great if you can afford a really nice mansion like this and fix it up and make it look beautiful, but that doesn't mean that this person should be rewarded with being able to monetize this property unfairly over their neighbors. It's going to increase their neighbors' property values eventually. It's going to decrease their neighbors' quality of life. And it's just not fair in my opinion. So I'm against this spot zone, and I'm also against the other spot zone for this applicant on Jackson and Perdido Street. And I hope that you would vote in line with your staff's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in opposition for this docket matter? Are there any other speakers in opposition? I need to speak in opposition. If not, the applicant will have 6 minutes for rebuttal.
Honestly, it won't even take 6 minutes. We probably should have actually just taken up 919 and 1706 together, because it's going to be the same opposition against all the same reasons. The one thing is, when they start talking about neighborhoods, Mr. Galvin actually lives on that property. And the neighbors, when they talk about neighbors, they would walk in and they don't even know who he is. So I always kind of crack a smile when people say that. Do you really know who your neighbors are? And in this particular house, Mr. Galvin owned it since 2012, and most people didn't even know who he was when he walked in the room. He was just sitting there waiting for people to come in and greet him. We had only a very few people, and actually no one actually spoke out against it then. And even after getting tours, and the hotel down the street actually congratulated him, thought it was a great job, but it doesn't compete with his business, and he liked it because it actually improved the whole character of the neighborhood. Because the property's always maintained in pristine condition, because it has to be, because you're trying to attract the Hollywood South. And what I still go back to is that was actually the birth of the short-term rental industry. That's what got us going. That's what attracted individuals to come to it. Mr. Galvin's not a company. He's a person. He lived in his house. He started short-term rental. It's the highest and best use of his property, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's America. So that said, he can currently short-term rental. It's going to stay short-term rental. It's never going to be a long-term property. Never long-term tenants whatsoever. So we'd ask that the staff report be reversed, but I think that falls on their fears. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That closes the public hearing portion for this docket matter. Commissioners?
Move accept the staff report.
It's been moved by Commissioner Isaacson, second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion?
I just want to add that I'm in favor of the motion, and I thought the staff's on page 2 of the report, reasons for recommendation couldn't be more clear. Number 1, not allowable under the master plan. Number 2, even if it were, the particular zone asked for wouldn't be appropriate because it's intended for multiple blocks. Number 3, with dissimilar treatment, which is what we heard earlier today. Number 4, the idea that that this zoning change would allow a whole bunch of other uses, restaurants, retail stores, offices, which wouldn't be appropriate in that building. And number 5, would undermine the logic of the short-term rental regulations. I think that kind of says it all, so I'm in favor of the motion.
Any other discussion? Any other comments? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Zoning docket 01218.
The next item is zoning docket 12-18 for properties located at 413, 415 North Tonty Street, bounded by North Tonty Street, Oak Place, North First Blake Street, and Tonty Street. This is is a request for a zoning change from an HURD2 two-family residential district to an HUMU historic urban neighborhood mixed-use district. The applicant is seeking a zoning change so that the building may be utilized as a commercial short-term rental. The subject property is residential in its original use and construction. The structure does not have a history of commercial uses, and the request does not meet the standards of zoning change approval set forth in Article 4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, including being incompatible with the surrounding land uses and the development trends in the area. The request is inconsistent with the master plan's residential low-density free water future land use designation, which allows the commercial zoning of only structures that have a history of commercial use. Also, the rezoning of this residential structure, which would unjustifiably treat it differently from similarly situated residents on the square, would be a spot zone and is not allowable under the historic non-conforming use. Therefore, the staff recommends denial of zoning docket 12-18.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone here to speak in support for this docket matter? I didn't see any cards.
I'm the applicant. I didn't know. Yeah, I've never done this before.
Okay. You want to go to? You have to go to the mic. You can state your name and address for the record.
My name is Joseph Bia. The address is 413 North Tonti. I'm representing One Maxwell Group, but I'm representing them as a agent, but I'm the tenant, and I actually requested from One Maxwell Group that they allow me to apply for the rezone. I've read the staff report, and she just addressed it. But before I respond, I'd like to give some background information on the house and my intentions going forward. I've attempted to responsibly host short-term rentals full-time over the last 3 years. First as individual rooms when I had roommates, then as a full house. I have a good rapport with the immediate neighbors. I intend on purchasing it within the next few months. I've tried to be as transparent with everyone as possible. My purpose for trying to rezone the house is to continue hosting full-time, as I've done successfully the last 3 years. I have the support of 5 immediate neighbors in trying to rezone the house, who've all lived next door since I've had it the last 3 years. And I also have the support of the 2-Lane Canal Neighborhood Association, which I hope reflects my dedication to doing things the right way and respecting the neighborhood. I bought a short-term rental license, from safety and permits as soon as they issued them. I meet all my guests personally and ask them to respect the neighborhood and to be quiet when coming and going. Before I moved in, the landlord had not been able to get a long-term tenant for over 3 months, and the property manager even offered me a monthly discount on rent at the showing before I moved in. This was also during all the shootings that were happening around Conti and Tonti, including the really big one, which happened roughly 6 months after I moved in the summer of 2015. The exterior of the house was in bad condition when I moved in, and I spent months with my family cleaning and fixing things, especially on the exterior within my budget, to try and make it more presentable. And I keep the street, the house in the street by picking up trash, which was the...
That concludes your time unless there's a question from the Commissioner.
Yeah, I'll just ask a question because I want to hear some of this through, and I also want to know why is it you need this rezoning and what you can't do that you want to do now.
Sure, I have. Okay. Yeah, I can keep reading that.
Yeah, although I guess the little bell means you should speed up a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I've tried to keep it up though. So as of right now, HURD2, I'm only allowed to rent it 90 days a year, and I would just like to get it rezoned to HUMU to keep renting it full time. All of the houses, if you look at the picture across the alley to the right of the house, they're all HUMU. As far as the staff report, saying it could be another commercial establishment such as a restaurant. All these houses, it's a house. All the houses next to it are houses.
I mean, the exterior of the house still needs a bit of work, so I'd like to use the money from hosting it full-time short-term rentals just to renovate the house. I had a house inspection done by Gertwood Brothers Incorporated. You know, the roof needs work. Half the house is vinyl siding, half is hardy plank. I'd like to do the whole thing hardy plank, paint it, shore the house. It's not level right now. You know, I've already spent a bit of money within my budget just trying to clean it and fix it up and make it more presentable. You know, this isn't like one of those situations where all, you know, as this meeting has shown, where the neighbors are opposing it, you know, the neighborhood association is opposing it. I have the support of the neighborhood association. I have the support of, you know, 5 immediate neighbors. There's a mechanic shop to the right, like an auto shop right there. That's, you know, one of the buildings zoned HUMU. There's a bar half a block over. You know, that's just another commercial building. I'm just trying to essentially just do what I've been doing. Yeah, sorry.
So your answer to the question is you just want more than 90 days?
Correct.
Thank you.
I have one question. So you say you intend on purchasing the property?
Yes, and I want to put, you know, the money from hosting full-time short-term rentals into the house. I'm not going to sell it. I'm not trying to flip it. You know, I just want to invest in the house and keep doing what I've been doing with the support of the neighborhood.
Do you have like a timeline on the purchase?
I'm looking at March. The landlord's been anxious to sell it to me. He's worked with me and been very patient. He's wanted to sell it to me since the summer, and I started the rezone application, an NPP meeting in October. Nobody showed up to the NPP meeting. The 2-Lane Canal Neighborhood Association had concerns at first, and I addressed them, and then I garnered their support after speaking with them. And like I said, I have the support of 5 immediate neighbors who've been there the entire time I've had the house.
And you actually live in a double as well, right?
It's not a double, it's actually just a single. And right now I'm actually about to move. I'm building a house. So I'll be moving into that. So this house would be, that's why I'm trying to have it zoned as a full-time short-term rental. I used to live in it, and I would do individual rooms, and then I got the landlord's permission to do the entire house, and I got the license from safety and permits.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of this document? If not, we'll move to opposition. Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address for the record.
Erin Holmes, here for the PRC. I want to reiterate our opposition to these types of zoning requests. This is still commercial creep into a residential area, even though some of the details are different from the previous application. Again, we just want to continue our opposition to these.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers here in opposition of this document? If not, the applicant will have time for rebuttal.
I don't know. I feel like I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say about it. You know, like I said, all the houses immediately on the right side of Oak Place Alley are the zoning I'm looking to get. And yeah, I hope y'all will consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. That now closes the public hearing portion of this document matter. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, this is just a general comment that for the other commissioners, so I can have my thinking shaped if need be. But it seemed that it was a very difficult and long process to figure out how to do the short-term rental compromise. And we want to make it work. And if we start spot zoning based on the appeal of one particular person or another, it would seem that it undermines the fact that we have the system in place. So I wonder, as we do these things, you know, shouldn't we have some consistency to say, no matter how appealing or the siding use or the amount of money, we have to play by the plan that I mean, some people are against short-term rentals. I think the PRC was against some, but we got the compromise, and I think this kind of whittles away at it if every now and then we pick a place to say, okay, we'll change the zoning so they can do it. So I don't know where to draw the line, but I kind of feel we do have to draw the line, even if somebody tugs at our heartstrings and we feel it'd be a cool thing for them to be able to do something.
I think that's well said. I think that's well said, Commissioner Isaacson. I also think you seem to be doing a lot of work on this property. I thank you for helping to stabilize a property in a neighborhood that now has a better property available for the long term. The 90 days is there for a reason, and the owner-occupied is there for a reason. I mean, even though the commissioner was not part of a lot of the longitudinal discussions, you've captured it, I think, very well, Mr. Isaacson, that those are the standards that we worked long and hard to come into and that City Council supported, and so as appealing as an individual actor like yourself and citizen may be, I'm going to make the motion if the chair will allow to support staff's recommendation on this.
Motion by Commissioner Weaver, second by Commissioner Steve. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried.
I just think by doing this the way we have so far today, at least, I hope it sends a signal to people that, you know, don't go buying property and deciding that you're going to get it spot zoned, because I feel sorry for people go in as you did. Well, actually, you owned it. I mean, you had bought it. Yeah. But that's why it's a little bit easier in this case. But we don't want people to go in, buy something, and think that they're then going to change it to commercial or change it into business or change it into something that would allow real short-term rentals. So I hope the message goes out that we're tending to deny these unless there's some extreme circumstance.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner. Zoning docket 01318.
Zoning docket 01318 is a request for a conditional use to permit a standard restaurant over 5,000 square feet of floor area in an HUB1 historic district, historic urban neighborhood business district, a CPC character preservation corridor design overlay district, a CPC character preservation corridor design overlay district, and the Magazine Street use restriction overlay district. The petition property is located at 3306 Magazine Street at the corner of Magazine Street and Toledano Street. The restaurant will occupy approximately somewhere between 6,800 and 6,900 square feet of vacant commercial space that is composed of two existing one-story buildings, 3300 Magazine and 1030 Toledano, and a two-story building at 1030 Toledano. The applicant proposes to combine into one space via renovation. The proposed use as a standard restaurant is a permitted use in the HUB1 historic urban neighborhood business district, but the petition site is also subject to the Magazine Street use restriction overlay district, which is intended to supplement the base zoning district to ensure compatibility of development. The additional regulation provided by the use restriction overlay causes a standard restaurant to be allowed as a conditional use at this location. Granting the conditional use would enable three contiguous but vacant structures that were historically occupied by commercial and residential uses to operate, once combined under renovation, as a standard restaurant. The request is consistent with the master plan, but does not meet all of the conditional use approval criteria. Given Magazine Street's historic and current profile as a commercial corridor. The proposed restaurant is an appropriate use provided that it is developed in accordance with all applicable regulations and provisos. The proposal, as said before, is consistent with the master plan, and therefore the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 01318, subject to 9 provisos.
Thank you. I have one card for information only, and it is from David Fulton. You still on with the request?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just request.
So, she has requested a deferral, but I also have one card in opposition. And if Ms. Landry, if you would like to speak, you can come forward at this time. If not, or
We're okay with this.
you're okay with deferral?
Thank you.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what was said.
We're just requesting a deferral.
Request for a deferral.
Thank you.
For how many meetings?
For 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks?
Yes, the 1 week.
Okay. So the applicant is requesting a deferral for 2 weeks.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hughes, second by Commissioner Isaacson. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor, state saying by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, the motion is carried. Our next docket matter, 01418.
Zoning docket 014-118 is a request for Harbor Community Church for zoning change from SLRS1 Suburban Lakeview Single Family Residential District to an SLB1 Suburban Lake Area Neighborhood Business District. The petition property is located at Square 285, lots 25, 26, 27, and 28 in the 2nd Municipal District, bounded by Canal Boulevard, Germain, Eddie the 14th, and French Streets. The municipal address is 6100 Canal Boulevard. The site has always existed as a Harbor Community Church and continues to operate as such. Institutional uses such as a place of worship or government offices are permitted within the current SLRS1 zoning district. To allow future commercial use of the space, the applicant proposes to rezone the subject property from an SLRS1 Lakeview Single Family Residential District to an SLB1 Lake Area Neighborhood Business District. Language to the residential single-family post-war form designation underwent review from City Planning Commission at the October 10, 2017 public hearing with an approval to change the goal to allow for mixed-use, neighborhood-serving commercial and multifamily uses in previously institutional properties. The recommendation must be heard through City Council and will be heard at the February 8, 2018 public hearing with final decisions from City Council. When City Council votes on the form revisions, the new language will be the new force of law. This change in language could make the zoning request consistent with the master plan, and therefore the staff would like to wait until after the City Council hearing to make a recommendation. The staff recommends deferral of zoning docket 01418 until the February 27, 2018 City Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you so much. The applicant has asked for a deferral for this document. It's February 27th. However, I have cards in my hand for this document. If anyone here who would like to speak, you will have an opportunity to speak. Or if not necessarily, there may be a motion to necessarily give this document a referral. But if you would like to speak, you can have the opportunity to speak. So, just by show of hands, I see a few people who want to speak. So if the applicant is here, Peter, come forward at this time, and you will have 2 minutes to speak on behalf of the owner.
Thank you. Peter Sparrow, 900 Camp Street, Suite 304. I'm the principal of Good Studio, an architecture firm representing the owner of the property and the potential buyer of the property. Based on CPC staff's recommendation and our want to have more meetings with the Lakeview Civic Improvement Association and respond to more of the questions, we're asked for this to be deferred. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak in support of this document? If not, we'll move to the opposition. If I call your name, if you would like not to speak, you can pass. But first up, Joe Rochelle. I think this is L. Smith or Pell Smith.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Albert Smith. I live at 6100 Route 14th Street, which is approximately exactly 1 block away from the property. I would just like to say to you guys, I think this zoning this property, changing its zoning to commercial, is an inappropriate thing to do. You're looking at an 18,000 square foot building approximately that has, I want to say, 2 parking spaces in the back. That's it. Okay. So, you know, if you, for instance, were to build it out as an office space, you know, average employees per square foot, if you go and look at it, you know, American Realty Association, it's generally about 150 people per square feet, 150 square feet per person, which is 120 people, you know. I think in their original proposal they said something like 38 people, or 38 cars they estimated. That doesn't even seem to be in the realm of reasonableness. Even if you more than or double that square foot per person ratio, it would be 72 people, you know. And again, there's only 2 parking spaces for this building. Another thing I'd like to say is that I don't think you'll find anybody in Lakeview who supports this. So if you vote to approve this, you're going against the wishes of everyone in the neighborhood. I've spoken to a lot of people. Nobody is for this. I think it sets a bad precedent for the neighborhood to do something like this. And then I guess the last thing I would say about it, well, 2 things. One other thing. As I understand it, the price is approximately $2 million, $1.9 million. At 20% down. And let me just say, I'm a CPA. I've worked for 30 years in real estate. I looked at thousands of real estate transactions. Okay, so I think at that sales price, an average 20% down on a 20-year AM, 5%. That's generally what the terms you would expect. Debt service on that property under that scenario will be $130,000 a year. You've really got to have, you've got to put something in there, either a lot of people or you've got to have a lot of businesses, restaurant, bars, etc., to make that work, to make that cash flow. Okay, just one other thing. If I could just say one other thing.
Actually, if I may ask a question, the debt service seems to concern you about, it being commercial. Is there something the neighbors have thought of that might support that debt service on a building this large that would be amenable?
That was the last thing I wanted to say. Is that you don't even need to do this, okay? Because the guy who is in charge of this organization of Lakeview Harbor, he told me and a couple of my neighbors at the August 17th meeting that we had, he told us that he had 3, I want to say, I think either 3 or 4 other churches who want to buy the building and put offers in that they turned down. We don't oppose another church coming, but we do oppose you making it a commercial property. So the answer to your question is you don't need to have that kind of cash flow, just sell it to another church. Accept one of the other offers that were made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kirk Williamson. Jules Nunn.
Joe Rochelle,
Yep, come forward. What's your name?
Joe Rochelle.
So Mr. Jules is Stephen U. Time?
Yes, sir. And Ms. Rebecca Nunn and his son Jonathan Nunn is on there too.
And what's your name again?
Joseph Rochelle.
Did you file a call?
I did. I was told that I was called when I was out getting water. So
Okay, you have a total of 8 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about this. I live at 5562 Woodlawn Place, which is around the corner from this site. And I lived 2 doors down from this church for 2 years with my great aunt. And that's her son Jules and their family. They're still there. My family's been at this site for 60 years. And, you know, there's a lot of people who came back in 2008, 2009, and we rebuilt this neighborhood, expecting that it was going to take the shape of the neighborhood that was destroyed. And they put their money into it, they put their time into it. My great aunt was 80 years old when she came back and did this. And, you know, the remarkable thing is it's not a remarkable story. There's probably 10,000 stories like this all throughout this community. You know, if you want to look to a good example of how to do this, you can look to Beth Israel, which, when its congregation was destroyed, moved out to Metairie. But Beth Israel is on a whole block. It's got the whole block. There's 30 parking spots behind it. And now it's East Jefferson. And you got Dr. Murphy, and you got a radiologist there, and an OB. You go by, there's maybe 15 cars during the day, and they got spots for 30 of them. Here we're talking about 17,000 square feet of space. And you got 6 parking spots in the alley that's always blocked. And so we have a plan to maybe make it residential mixed use. The problem is this is not a mixed use neighborhood. It was developed along really basic Euclidean lines, and that's all we want. We don't want mixed use. It's never been mixed use. It's not a good idea. You know, there's 5 other churches on this stretch of Kanawha. You've got the Lutherans, you've got there's the Presbyterians, you know. I go to St. Paul's Episcopal at Harrison and Canal, and every year since Katrina, consistently we've been adding 40 to 50 new members. So you can't tell me that this can't be fit for a religious institutional use, because the people who are coming to this neighborhood expect that. And if you're not going to do that, do something like Beth Israel did, which is you can move, but do it respectfully and in appreciation to the community that you're in. This church does not serve the community. It never has. You go by every Wednesday, there's Jesus Rock concerts. And the Baptists were just a lot quieter, easier to get along with people. We didn't have these issues 10 years ago. So I just think we need to keep that in mind. You know, the scary part about the recommendation is that you're asking that we defer this whole thing until we rewrite the law so that it's consistent with the master plan, so that we can make these people happy. Well, they shouldn't have put their application in under the current law if that's what they wanted to do. But you can't say we're going to apply a law that we don't know whether or not it's going to exist in that form. You apply the law as it's written, and that's, I think, all we really want. And if it's an illegal spot zone today, that's the only law we have. And it's an attempt, I think we know, a real naked attempt to take a $600,000 investment and make it $2 million overnight. If there are faith communities that are interested in the spot, the pastor doesn't care about what happens to his neighbors, because, again, just his parishioners aren't in the neighborhood, that shouldn't be rewarded. It shouldn't be rewarded, and so, again, we would ask that this is a suburban neighborhood. It developed oriented towards the car, around the car. When the master plan was being written, Leslie Alley said, we like the word suburban. There's nothing wrong with the word suburban. We can call it suburban. And that's what we want. We like to get in our cars, drive up to the front of our house, step outside, and that's why parking's an issue and a concern for us. So you can't have 6 parking spots for 17,000 square foot commercial mixed use development that doesn't fit into the development historically of the neighborhood, and nobody wants it. The LCIA is against it. I could go on forever, but I'm not going to bore you anymore, so that's all I got.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Aaron LeBlanc?
Alice? LeBlanc?
Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, okay. Sorry.
We're neighbors.
We're neighbors.
Hi, my name's Erin LeBlanc. I live at 6050 Canal Boulevard, which is the block right before the Harbor Community Church. And I'm definitely opposed to it. Changing the zoning of 6100 Canal Boulevard from single-family residential to the Lake Area Neighborhood Business District must not be allowed. This property is located in a neighborhood for families and not a business district. Both my husband and I have lived all of our lives in Lakeview and have raised our family there as well. We have first-hand knowledge and appreciation of our Lakeview gem. Harrison Avenue has already been completely changed into a business corridor, and to think that the same thing could happen to Canal Boulevard or any other street for that matter is very, very troubling and should not be allowed. Not one single resident at the NPP meeting spoke out in favor of changing the zoning. There are other reasons not to support the church's request for a zoning change. The total lack of adequate parking spaces on a 17,000 square foot property would preclude any business from operation. There are presently approximately, differing numbers, but I said 5 off-street parking spots off the alley, which would not allow, most likely not allow even accommodate the business people that are working in the office building. Street parking is already quite congested on a daily basis for the number of resident car owners. There's still a number of empty lots in Lakeview. Once you allow one business, it becomes more difficult to stop others from building on those empty lots. Once businesses start encroaching and choking a neighborhood, it loses its residential quality. We know firsthand the disastrous effect that changing the nature of a neighborhood can have. Over 50 years ago, in the name of progress, the elevated expressway over Claiborne Avenue was built. We all know that what that structure did to the neighborhood, completely changing its physical and social makeup. Now, thankfully, there is a move to take down the structure, but at a tremendous cost. Canal Street, with all of its law offices, is another example of the destruction of a residential neighborhood.
Mr. LeBlanc, that concludes your time. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, DeMarcus Gordon. And you've been seated time by Donna Gordon. Would you like to speak?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is DeMarcus Gordon. I reside at 6115 Canal Boulevard, which is right across the street from this church. I also own the lot next door at 6123, which is also directly across the street from this church. So let's talk a little bit about parking. We've heard now that there is inadequate parking available at 6100 Canal Boulevard, the Harbor Community Church. So if any zoning change is made, what's going to be the problem? Parking is going to be the problem. So who's going to have to bear the burden of this parking? The neighbors. All of the neighbors here, all of the neighbors who have been at every single meeting. These are the neighbors who are burdened with any decision that this commission makes on a daily basis. It's an easy decision to make, certainly, to allow Harbor Community Church to reap a significant profit off of its investment, but leave the community in a worse condition than where it found it. I've been in this neighborhood now for 16 years. I've lived throughout the United States, but I choose to make New Orleans home. I don't have to, but I choose to. I chose this neighborhood because it's a safe neighborhood, because it's a neighborhood that I chose to raise my family, including my son. If a zoning change is allowed, this entire fabric of the neighborhood will deteriorate and change. One thing that hasn't been discussed yet is crime. When you change the zoning of 6100 Canal Boulevard, there's the possibility that any business can reside in that place. Because any business can reside in that place, you're now potentially allowing different elements to come into the neighborhood at all hours of the night or potentially during all hours of the day. None of this has been discussed, none of this has been vetted. The neighborhood has no choice or say if this building is sold and what goes in. To the extent this commission decides to grant a zoning request, I beg you that there be significant restrictions on what can be in its place, because we cannot allow the neighborhood to degrade to a point where there's no return. Many of the prior speakers mentioned Canal Street or other streets that have had significant zoning changes over time. It's my fear that this zoning change will lead to a slippery slope. You'll have other potential buyers in the neighborhood who are going to want to change their zoning so that they can capitalize and monetize their investment. And I'm asking you, and I'm begging you, please deny this request, and I ask you to deny it now. There's no reason for deferment. A lot of us are workers. A lot of us have taken time off today. Please don't make us come back time and again to tell you what we've already told the owner multiple times. This will not happen in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ross Mancuso.
Ross Mancuso. I own the property at 612628 Canal Street. It's a duplex in our boulevard. Occupy the upstairs and rent out the downstairs. Parking is already a problem there. At 2 different times in the morning, both the tenants are all there, and when the customers will be coming in for this new business. No need for repeating everything else that everyone else said. However, I am concerned about something about the city council change on February 8th, that they were going to take up and change this whole issue. I feel like we've been blindsided. I'm coming here to talk about this particular building. I understand there's an en bloc change to the whole zoning of possibly Lakeview, and it's 2 weeks away. And I didn't have any notice of it until somebody told me in the hall. So I'm very disappointed about that.
If I could get staff to sort of summarize what's going on with the master plan and future land use map for institutional uses, that would be...
And that's the February 8th thing we're talking about.
As I understand it, it's not a it's not a Lakeview future land use.
Sure, so
it's all institutional.
Right, so there's a change to the institutional language in the master plan that would allow for currently the language says that for institutional properties there is the ability to rezone them for multifamily use, and that's usually done through a plan development process. And so many schools throughout the city, institutions have been adapted to multifamily use without a master plan issue because it makes a specific allowance for this. So the pending change would open the door for commercial as well, and so that's what's being considered by the city council. And so because that's on the table, we don't want to prepare a staff report with a specific master plan discussion in mind for you as a planning commission, and then by the time it gets to the city council, the language that is applicable is very different. We just want sort of a consistent review the whole way through, and so we'd like to defer this, allow any master plan change that's going to happen, and then review the application with that new language, if there's new language in place.
Okay, so let us say that, that either happens or gets delayed and delayed and delayed. What would be the effect if we decided, based on current law and everything we've heard here, we deny the application, and then the thing changes? Could it then be resubmitted if the city council decides to change things, or would that cut this off?
So the city council, if it got to this, if the planning commission took action with the language in place that's in place today, and it went to the city council and the language changed before the new language was in effect, the city council would be dealing with it under whatever language is in place when they consider it. And so to prevent this from being a bit of a moving target, we'd like to briefly pause on it and have the master plan issue settled.
Commissioner Brown, let's clarify.
No, I'm clear. I just wanted to make sure that members of the audience who were talking about a slippery slope, that these were institutional changes to citywide, not to a particular church.
It applies to basically churches, schools to become commercial, and that's a city council decision having nothing to do with us, right?
The master plan decision. So what happens is, say that change is made. That doesn't mandate a zoning change, a commercial zoning change here. It simply says that under the master plan, one of the allowable courses of action is a commercial zoning. But if it's not appropriate in this location, you are free to make that determination. The city council is also free to make that determination.
And if we thought it was not appropriate for this location, why would we wait?
As a staff, it's our preference to have the master plan issue settled. If you are not comfortable with that and think that given what you are hearing today, you're comfortable acting on the application today, that's certainly within your rights.
Any other questions, commissioners? If not, we have one last speaker, Ms. Alice LeBlanc.
Okay, good afternoon, yes. My name is Alice LeBlanc. I live at 6131 Canal Boulevard. My family has lived there actually for 54 years. My widowed mother bought the property at that time. I have lived all over the country and come back to my beloved New Orleans, bought the property from my sister after my mother passed on. I reiterate what a lot of other people have said here. It is a neighborhood where we care about each other. I have the smallest house in the block. It is still a gem, and most importantly, it is where most of my money is tied up, as is the case with most property owners. Well, the value of our property is going to go down exponentially if we start commercializing this neighborhood. It will be the opposite of gentrification. It will be commercialization, and we will all suffer. Now, I'm not going to repeat all the many other things that people have said, which they're right about. When I did hear that these guys who own this church are thinking of switching a $600,000 investment to a $2 million investment, I started thinking, okay, I'm a 68-year-old woman, retired, who has COPD, and as my son likes to say, I am kind of cramming for the final. I'm looking at all the different options for the next life. So I check out all these different religions. And you know what? Every major religion has one of its first premises, which is treat your neighbor as yourself for the love of God. I don't care what religion it is. And this is supposed to be a religious institution. We've talked about intent in other issues today. I question the intent of these people when they've been offered opportunities to sell this place to other churches. They haven't even considered turning it into a condo. You could make 5 to 7 units out of that and pull in another $2 million that way. I know enough about it. That's it. Okay. Bottom line, they are not good neighbors.
All right, then. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in opposition? Anyone else speaking in opposition? If not, the applicant will have time for a rebuttal.
Thank you. Just first off, I want to state that neither my client or the current owner of the building went to the city council to ask for that change. That was something that we found out about during the process after the first MVP meeting. You know, based on that and based on the staff's recommendation, we need further time to research what the city council is going to come up with. A couple other things just to kind of confirm. There were other offers, but those offers all fell through from other churches because of the size of the sanctuary and a couple other things that have to do with it. I don't know about all those. I don't represent the current owner of the building, so I can't speak to every single thing that why those offers fell through. One other item that we would like to spend more time with LCIA, there was a meeting that they voted to reject, that they spoke about this. Me, myself, the current owner or the future owner weren't present at the meeting. We didn't know about the meeting. Also, since today we plan to ask for deferral, we didn't have anyone here to speak in support of it because we assumed that we'd be deferring it. So again, I would ask that that you follow the recommendation of the CPC staff and defer this matter to the second meeting in February. Thank you.
Thank you. That now closes the public hearing portion for the docket matter. Any questions and comments from any commissioners for staff or any helpful discussion?
I would love to hear some helpful discussion. Anybody have some thoughts?
I think I'll start it off. I think in hearing the overwhelming opposition, I understand the concern from the residents of the area, but I also hear from staff that necessarily the action that we take today might not necessarily be appropriate for city council pending not just Lakeview a pending issue, but a whole citywide issue. So with that said, since I can't offer a motion, I'll look to my left and my right for my colleagues to help me out on this one.
Are you offering a motion or no?
I think the other thing associated with this and the city council action is whatever we do has an ability to be appealed to city council. And so though there is a pending action on behalf of the city council, I think if there's a commissioner that feels strongly one way or another, it does not inhibit that city council motion from happening and them making a different decision from this body based on it. So I think there's two paths, the deferral or sending it up to city council based on their pending.
Maybe getting a motion on the floor might help. And I'm going to go out of bounds here from the staff report just so that we can perhaps go that place first, because I don't think we can really talk about the merits of this until there is a motion on the merits. So I'm going to move to deny the applicant's request, and whether or not I get a second determines whether we discuss that.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown, for that motion. Is there a second?
Give it a second.
There's a second. So we have a motion for denial by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Weaver. Any comments, discussion?
Yeah, I have a question, I guess, maybe legally, law, which is, if we feel this way based on what we've heard now, is it improper for us to do so if people thought there was going to be a deferral? Was there any agreement that there was going to be a deferral? Or, and then we denied people the right to speak in favor because there was an agreement there'd be a deferral?
No, only the board can grant a deferral. So it doesn't really matter what the staff recommends, y'all are the body, so you guys can choose to defer or you can choose to act.
And I guess my thought on this is that regardless of what happens at the council, whether it's a good idea citywide to look at institutional buildings that have had past institutional use, it is a good idea to, if they decide to go that way, but it will still come back to us, am I right, for a zoning change, and whether or not we think that that's a good idea. So the community, it seems, overwhelmingly feels that this is not something they want, whether it works or not. And so just that thought.
I think my reason for supporting Commissioner, being second on Commissioner Brown's motion is, I know in the past, in the transition and disposing of property for government and for churches, in a lot of cases we've been dealing with empty properties that have gone stagnant and lived off the tax rolls that we're trying to return to the tax rolls. This is in use in a vibrant community that does not support its transition. So that's why I was willing to support the motion, and I will vote in support of it.
Call the question.
I do have a comment, though. It's always tough when there are a lot of people who are in a neighborhood who are opposed to a particular development, and this is a sea change relative to having a church versus commercial. But on the other hand, public hearings are for the purpose of drawing out opinions and drawing out other information. So the problem is that I see a public hearing coming up now that's based on research which is council related that could pertain to not only this property but others. And I think that it would be prudent of us to allow that process to take place. It doesn't end this particular process. As far as the application is concerned, it winds up deferring it. So I would be in favor of staff's recommendation relative to deferral until after the council has made its decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Green, for that. Any other comments from any other commissioner?
We vote on
I'll just add this. I share those same sentiments with Commissioner Green. I think necessarily there's strong opposition for this, but relative to necessarily continuing this process and going through, I would prefer to see a deferral of this docket matter so that we can address it, at a later time and kind of make the best decision forward. But I did hear the concerns of all the residents. If it's turned into a commercial about the parking and everything else too, but I think the best decision is necessarily deferral so that we can properly address it. So with that said, I'll call the question for the zoning docket matter. All in favor of Commissioner Brown's motion, state by saying aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, I think we're going to have some votes on both sides, so maybe we should have a show of hands.
Okay. So we'll do a hand vote. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 4.
Yeah, I'm up.
4. All right. Oppose? 3 opposed. So at this point, there's a deadlock. No recommendation. This would actually go to council with no recommendation, correct?
The motion fails, so
motion
there's an
fails.
alternative motion that can be entertained, otherwise, yes, we go to council.
Right.
I then move that we defer as per staff recommendation.
Okay. So the last motion actually failed for lack of a majority. So now there's an alternative motion by Commissioner Isaacson for
Deferral as per staff recommendation.
for the February 27th meeting, correct? Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Hughes.
I'd like it to come back to us.
Is there any comments, discussion on that motion?
Well, just because I hear comments from the public, I just want to make it clear that it takes 5 votes of the City Planning Commission to refer it to the City Council. So what the Assembly done is not gotten 5 votes to refer it to the Council. So even though it's 4 to 3, it's not 5.
It's not a legal majority, so therefore it wouldn't pass. So it got.
We're a non-member board, so it takes 4 votes too. I'm going to support the motion, even though I'm ready to send it with a denial, not a denial, but the no recommendation as we just voted. But I'll support Commissioner Isaacson's motion.
The reason to defer is because we have explained why, which is then it comes back to us after we've heard all the discussion. Maybe the discussion will change some minds, or maybe there'll be 5 votes one way. So instead of just punting it, let's defer it and they can come back to us. Even if the master plan has changed, those who believe that it should not be commercial can vote no, and those who believe it should can vote yes.
No, the public hearing portion is actually closed. So there's a motion by Commissioner Isaacson, second by Commissioner Hughes, for a motion to defer this into the February 27th meeting. Is there any more discussion or comments on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor signify by raising your hands. Unanimous.
passed for deferral until February 27th. And I would just like to add, as far as the residents who took time out today to come, your statements is a part of the public hearing portion on that docket matter. So if you would like to show up on February 27th, you can. If not, your statement has been recorded for this docket matter. Thank you. Zoning docket 01618.
I'm sorry, the presentation.
I'm sorry.
We're on
50. Zoning document 01518. I'm sorry.
Zoning document 015-18
is a request by applicant Wilson Lee Investment LLC for a conditional use permit. Conditional uses permit a gas station and permit retail sales of packaged alcoholic beverages in the C1 General Commercial District with an enhancement corridor overlay at 2000 Earnhardt Boulevard. The petition site is located along a major corridor just outside the CBD, where residential uses are nearby but not immediately abutting the property. The proposal consists of a substantial renovation of the existing multi-tenant shopping center by the addition of 10 fuel pumps and a associated canopy in front of the existing buildings, and of course the renovation of that existing building. Site activities associated with fuel sales are appropriate if design and use standards contained in the zoning ordinance are implemented. This proposed use is in general compliance with the master plan and the general purpose and intent of applicable zoning district regulations. However, additional plan detail is needed to confirm detailed compliance with those regulations. Additionally, the sale of packaged alcohol is not inherently different than the sale of other food-related products and is appropriate if responsibly managed. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 015-1-18 subject to 15 provisos listed in the report. These provisos are generally associated with additional plan documentation and or modification needed to verify compliance with CZO requirements. Because the proposal is generally consistent with the plans for the 21st century and with the general purpose and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations, and the 15 recommended provisos can successfully address issues of compatibility in both design, character, and use.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Miles grandson, and we have Avery Forte and City Council as well.
Miles Granderson, 800 Brown. We want to thank the staff for its review and recommendation of approval, especially given the crunch of last week's freeze. I know getting the report in was tough. The site currently operates as 3 retail bays, including a Danny's food store and a Metro CVS. The applicant proposes to substantially improve the property in terms of use, occupancy, aesthetics, and operations. The prospective operator is committed not just to operating a quality store generally, but also to operating design the property specific to the needs of the community and of that site in particular. Primarily, we've heard a lot of concern from the neighborhood with regard to loitering, trash, crime, that sort of thing, and that the prospective operator intends to address those outside this process with City Planning Commission. The application at the end of the day is for a conditional use to allow a gas station and to allow retail sale of alcoholic beverages. Note, of course, that this site already had a non-conforming use established and confirmed by safety and permits for the retail sale of alcoholic beverages. Note also, as noted by staff, that the fuel station in this auto-oriented C1 district is appropriate. 2 major streets on either side located on the corner, closest gas stations being Claiborne and then the Exxon on Lee Circle, etc. As staff has recommended approval, I'm not going to belabor the point at this stage, but just know that the owner is committed to improving the site and improving this intersection for the community. And most importantly, for your evaluation, this use is master plan appropriate, and it's been confirmed as such by staff. So whatever else we get into, whatever else there may be, ultimately that's what this commission is here to decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers here in support of this zoning docket matter? Are there any other speakers here in support of this zoning docket matter? If not, we'll move to the opposition. First speaker I have for opposition is Cynthia Wiggins.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Wiggins. I'm a property manager for Gus Homes.
Ms. Wiggins, please state your address for the record.
I'm sorry, 1301 Simon Boulevard Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the 600 families that reside in the Gus Homes property that comprise of 385 elderly handicapped and elderly individuals, as well as 300 families that live on the Gus Homes property. We are here in opposition to this application as presented to this commission. As outlined in our letter that was submitted to the commission via mail, our request is, we believe, supports the city's master plan, as we believe this petition before the commission is certainly contrast to the plans and designs developed by the City Planning Commission. Our community have just recently went through a $39 million redevelopment, and in conjunction with doing that, we have on our own developed and begun the process for creating home ownership opportunities for the families that live in the Gus Homes complex. We built 16 single-family homes. I think Jericho Road, as well as the city of New Orleans, has recently built an additional 16 units on Saratoga, which will be about maybe 2 blocks away from this proposed site. In our search of the federal law, the FHA will not loan any family or finance any first-time homeowners a home should that property be located 300 feet within a gas station. The plan of this Brothers Gas Station will abort all of our efforts in that neighborhood. We have acquired property adjacent to this property on Saratoga in the 1200 block to build single-family homes for the families that live in the Gus Homes property. We're asking this commission to please not abort our plans to create a home ownership opportunities for the families that live in Gus and those individuals that's interested in moving in that area. We also have been working very closely with various businesses in this community to create small businesses that will provide the kind of services that we believe our community needs. Those services comprise of a small grocery store for our seniors who currently have nowhere to shop for fresh produce. Currently, Danny's provide that to us. We currently have a restaurant in our neighborhoods where they can now go and buy hot plates. We're looking for, and we have a barber shop that's in our community we want to see upgraded. We also need a hair salon, boutiques, banks, a pharmacy certainly is so badly needed, as well as the opportunity for a health clinic or health facility to be in our community. So we're asking this commission to not abort what we have designed for our neighborhood, as it's now becoming a very vibrant community, to allow another brothers that will come in there and impact this community in such a negative way as we continue to try and address the criminal activity that currently exists. We believe that Brothers will enhance the current activity that's taking place on that corner between the homeless, the prostitution, the shootings and so forth that takes place on that corner. Brothers does not and will not be able to impact that, nor will it enhance the economic opportunity for our families. Thank you.
May I ask you one question? I want to make sure I have
Yes,
in my mind's eye. This is where LaSalle turns. You're going in the downtown
No, wait,
direction.
Earhart is with
where
Greyhound
LaSalle-
bus station is.
Say again?
The Greyhound bus station.
Right.
You're on the opposite side of the Greyhound bus station.
Yeah, right. So if I'm coming from uptown on LaSalle, I pass the Gus homes and on the other
Yes.
side of the street, and when I go to the right to get onto Earhart, it's that shopping center right there.
Yes.
Okay.
So, Ms. Wiggins, I have a question for you. So your main concern is the impact of the actual gas station, that it would just bring more traffic, or?
Well, not so much traffic. It's the mere fact that we have a corner grocery store right now that actually sells alcohol. There is a heavy element on that corner that we're trying to get rid of. Where there is alcohol being sold, clearly it has enhanced the criminal activity in the neighborhood. And I'm not telling you it's something based on what somebody told me. I'm telling you what we know to be the truth. We don't believe that the Brothers is going to help us to continue to move that community forward in the manner by which we've begun to redevelop in the area.
Next speaker, Samuel Herman.
Good afternoon, Sam Heyman, 1435 North 3rd. I'm here today to represent the Healthy Corner Store Collaborative. Our program works alongside New Orleans corner stores to maximize their business sustainability and increase the amount of fresh, healthy food offered in their store. In the past 6 months, and in an effort to increase food access in Central City, we've been working closely with the current tenant of 2000 Earhart, Brooke Abraha, the 6th District Police Station, Cynthia Wiggins, the Gus community, and hundreds of Central City residents to create a safer, healthier, and happier grocery making experience. All of this is possible because of the current tenant, Brooke Abraha, and his passion for serving the marginalized and food insecure populations of this neighborhood. We're here today to oppose the build-out of a gas station and convenience store by Brothers Food Market at 2000 Earhart because such a project would aim to remove Brooke and Ruda Abraha from their station at Danny Food Store. We fear that if this goes forward, options for fruits and vegetables in this neighborhood in Central City will be severely limited. Since he began selling produce 6 months ago, Brooke has sold over 10,500 units of produce, almost 4,000 pounds. During this period, close to 93% of all produce that we deliver to that store is resold to the community, and 78.8% of all that produce is sold within the first week. This shows that the demand is high in Central City, it's high at Gus Housing, and Brooke is providing an outlet for this fresh produce. This past week, I went to 2 other corner stores on MLK right next to the Gus Housing. When I was able to find produce that wasn't soggy or moldy or had sprouts in it, it was expensive. Way more expensive than it is at Brooke. Brooke follows the motto of this collaborative, which is simple. Fresh produce, healthy groceries should not be treated as a luxury item, and for that, he's become a trusted and appreciated face in Central City. I'll close by saying this. We would not be so vehemently opposed to this, to Brothers taking over this store, if they had approached him from the beginning, if they had wanted to work with him.
This may conclude your time. But I'll ask you a question. So, the current owner is the tenant that's actually leasing the spot now?
That's the current operator of the store.
Ella Cam Burnback?
Hi, Ella Cameron back from representing Felicity Redevelopment, 1139 OC Haley. I'm here to echo the sentiments of both the Guest Home and the Healthy Corner Store Collaborative. While we very much appreciate the developer saying that they want to improve the aesthetics of this corner, this is a gateway to our neighborhood. In fact, on that neutral ground at Salmon Boulevard, there's a sign that says "Welcome to Central City." In sharing the views of the past 2 speakers, we don't feel that a gas station selling alcohol is what we want greeting people as they enter our neighborhood. We think that this development will detract from the overall safety, health, and well-being of our neighbors, and we hope that you deny the application.
Thank you. I think this is her retro lover. Station, your name and address for the record.
My name is Henrietta Glover. I reside in 1301 South Baldwin. I'm one of the seniors that this meeting spoke of. Right now, we are able to go across the street and get fresh vegetables. I look at the brothers come there. I have been to places where I've seen brothers operating at, and there's a lot of undesirables. Not only that undesirables, but you also look at we do not need a tank to be put in our neighborhood. I don't think we need a gas station. Also, see that we will increase our homeless people that will be hanging around. I also see, I will see a lot of top cars where there's a lot of alcohol being drank. I also see that there's no way that we as seniors can even go across that way to participate in anything that they deal with brothers being operated with. I am for different sections of this property being businesses that will help us. And like Ms. Williams was saying, barber shops or places that are necessity in the neighborhood. I do not see this place being friendly for seniors. I do not feel it being friendly for the young children. We always got to think of our young children. Also, I see a lot of crime. I have been around other brothers. I do not see them employing a lot of the neighborhood people. There's one thing I'm against. And I also like for you all to think about when you all make a decision, if our neighborhood be deteriorated, and that means that we're going to have a lot of $100 people, a lot of alcoholic people, and a lot of homelessness that's going to increase, and a lot of solicitation that's going to be in this business, and a lot of trash that's going to be in our neighborhood. I would like you all to think about, as you make your vote, that we do not need a brother. We do need businesses there that can provide services to the seniors.
All right, thank you, Ms. Glover. That concludes your time.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, Billy Gordon.
My name is Billy Gordon, 25th, 28th Street. I'm sitting here listening to all these people talk about these stories you're trying to build. I've been living in the neighborhood 50 years. We have fought to stick and steel to get it like it is now. Now you want to bring a filling station in, we're going to throw it right back where we was? We don't need that. We got a great store going on, the neighborhood's going. It's not about dollars, it's about people. We got homeless people on the bridge. We bring alcohol, they're going to be there 24/7. We're fighting for a better environment. And y'all vote on this, we're going to be right back where we started from. But like I said, if these people y'all sit here and listen to what we're saying, but like I said, if that was in your neighborhood, what you wanted, seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Tremaine Kirkland.
Good evening, my name is Tremaine Kirkland. I reside at 2350 Dahlia, just a couple of feet from this location, and I'm a single mother. I have a 6-year-old son. My mother also stayed in that area on 2441 Martin Luther King, and basically, I just wanted to say that putting a Brothers gas station there would just only diffuse the crime that we already have in our neighborhoods, and it's going to just make it our environment more hostile. I mean, we already trying to, make it safe for our children to play out there and be able to walk and catch the bus to go to work. I mean, I also work at Gus Homes in this weekend, so I work and also live in that area. So, I mean, just putting that gas station there, it won't even defeat the purpose of us trying to keep our family safe and our kids a place to even play. I mean, we already have the homeless people and the other outsiders coming in our community, just making it more difficult for us to live. I mean, just live a day or two in our shoes and stay where we live at, and you let us know if that's a great idea to put a Brothers gas station there. I mean, cause I've lived back there for 10 years now. I mean, I don't think it won't work. And you'll see where we coming from if you just go back there and stay a day or two where we live at. And you want to see what we're talking about. Like, this is not going to solve anything. It's going to make it worse. I mean, we have to go through this every day. We live there. So we just go stay back there for a day or two and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. Just take a step in our shoes. See where we coming from. We live this day and night. Running with the shootings and everything. Just go back there and live a day or two. You'll see.
I have another a card from Brooke, but I think you're ceding your time. Are you ceding time or are you speaking? Brooke?
Yes.
You speaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Brooke Abraham, and I operate the dairy food store. And we've been serving the community.
State your address for the record. The address.
The address, I work for 2000 Earhart Boulevard and Suite A in the zip code 70113. And we've been serving the community since 2012, and our customers are local customers. And we have good relationship with the community, and we know about 70 to 80% of our customers by name, not by number. We try to help clean the area by providing people who give apartments by giving them a venue in the store. And as our community in that area is low income community, we participate in the Healthy Corner Store project to provide affordable foods and vegetables. And we work with the 6th District Police Station and with the community to keep our area safe. And finally, this project has come people body, and we were not communicated to prepare for the upcoming things. The only communication we got directly was January 2nd, 2017, and this is new to us. So it disrupts all our communication with the community and with stakeholders in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, sir. So you operate in that building, and has your landlord told you to get out? Because there's no room for brothers and all these lanes of traffic and you, right?
Yeah, we have a lease for the next almost 5 years, but they didn't tell us whether the property is going to be sold or not. We just got a letter on January 2nd, 2018 that says that the landlord is changed, so pay your rent to this place, to the brothers. That's how we know. So we were not communicated at all by these people, either the sellers or the
Did you have a lease for 5 more years?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our next speaker to give me Adrian Lagarde. Adrian.
Hello, my name is Adrian Lagarde.
State your address for the record.
2332 Governor Nichols Street. And I work for the Healthy Corner Store Collaborative, and our main focus is healthy food access. And putting a Brothers up would go against everything that we stand for. And the Healthy Corner Store has been working with the community, providing fresh produce, and the community's been loving it. It's fresh, affordable, and Brothers would just put out gas and fresh fried chicken, and that's not really helping the community. So I'm against the gas station going up, and I'm for a pork store.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kia Coblin.
2524 Perdido Street. I also live in the community where the bookstore is. I actually been back there all my life as a child growing up into an adult. I am also a single mother, and like Miss Henrietta said, putting the brothers there is just gonna create nothing but trouble. I've been to a couple of brothers before, and I don't think I ever spend my money there. I mean, it's not good. Brooke is our family, so we're totally against you guys or whoever is trying to put that gas station there. Like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't tear Brooke down and put a gas station there. We don't want that. I mean, we have kids growing up in the community. Like, put something, you know, put something else in the neighborhood that the kids can enjoy. Don't put the gas station there. We're totally against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen. I didn't attempt it.
Krebling. Is that it? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Christine Krebling. I represent Propeller 4035 Washington Avenue, the Senior Food Program Manager there. I think the neighborhood has spoken. I just wanted to reiterate the current tenant's commitment to community and healthy food access. He has invested his own funds and infrastructure in his store so he can better serve his community. He has surveyed countless community members to ask what type of produce they want and at what price point. And I think we shared some of the metrics. And I believe that the gas station, 24 hours, whatever the hours might be, will kind of undo a lot of that work that the community has worked so hard to build, that social capital that Brooke is so committed to. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Caller Blodgett?
Almost. Blodgett.
Sure. Kyler Blodgett, and my address is 5415 Loyola Ave. I'm here as a representative from Propeller, which is a business accelerator located in Broadmoor. We work with Brooke through the Public Corner Store Collaborative. Through the model of Propeller, I get to work with many different business owners across the city, and from that, I'm able to tell you that the type of business leadership that you see in Brooke is of rare and high quality. Right? And frankly, he is irreplaceable in his role and what he does on that street corner. It's true that brothers may be able to go to community meetings and commit to, you know, having community input, take that into consideration, but paper, there's a huge disconnect between what can be written out on paper and what a stoner can do 16 hours a day, and Brooke does that with wife Ruda in this store. It's true, Stuart, you had a question about, is the lease 5 more years, can they coexist? They could, you know, on paper coexist, but what you'll see is that brothers with 40 stores have resources to price gouge for a year, 2 years, 3 years, as long as it takes, because they don't want the competition next door, right? This is leadership that the New Orleans community has the responsibility to preserve and to grow, and frankly, you all have an amazing opportunity right now for a recommendation that will facilitate that, because these are the people that we need as the rocks in our community across the city. So I just want to leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other speaker who would like to speak in opposition to this docket matter? Any other speaker? If not, the applicant now has time for rebuttal.
And before you begin, because you'll have your full time, I'm going to ask you a question to begin with before you start. Is Brothers buying this property?
Yes.
Okay.
Brothers is purchased the property.
So they have already bought it?
Correct.
And are they planning to evict Mr. Brooke?
Well, as mentioned, there's a lease in place, and they're not planning on doing anything inconsistent with that lease. Anything that happens going forward in terms of coexisting or not would have to be fully consistent with the lease and further mutual agreement of the parties.
So is the Brothers store and the gas station being developed in a way that
yes.
I mean, I don't see room for all of that on that one parcel.
There are 3 units there. There's one little small unit on the left side, and then there are 2 exactly the same size units on the far right where Danny's is and right in the middle. The one right in the middle is where the Brothers is going.
One
So if there are 3 units there, if you look at them, 3 bays, 3 retail bays, and they are, so one, it's about 3,500 square feet, 3,500 square feet, 1,000 square feet. So Danny's is in this 3,500 square foot space.
So
Brothers is going
south?
in this 35 square foot space.
Danny's
is the one that's along Simone Boulevard or Simon Bolivar, depending how you want to say it.
I keep saying it was south, but it turns into Simon Boulevard.
Exactly. And so Brothers would be in the middle of that building.
Okay, and where are all the gas station pumps going?
So the pumps would, right where the arrow is. One thing also that I'll mention to folks here is that there are plans for 5 islands, 10 total pumps, and that's the plan. If the owner would be amenable potentially to scaling down to 4 islands and 8 total pumps, but that's where they're going right there.
And does Danny currently sell alcohol now?
Yes, in fact, there is an existing non-conforming use as determined by Dr. Munster. So yes.
Dr. Munster is
Director of Safety and
Oh,
Permits.
sorry.
So if Brothers bought the property, they're going to go in the middle bay.
Correct.
And are you stating on the record that they plan to let Brooke remain?
So what I'm saying, I have to admit I haven't had deep conversations. In fact, I've probably learned as much about this lease in the last half an hour or a couple of hours as I knew before this. But in speaking with the owner briefly before this meeting, whatever occurs is obviously going to be legal. So what that means is either the tenant keeps with their existing lease, or there's an agreement that's reached between the landlord and tenant, or anything else, but there's not going to be anything that would operate outside of the standard legal norms.
Right, but, so I was looking for something more than that, because there might be a legal way for him to be shown the door, so I was looking for a commitment from you on behalf of the developer that they were going to let him stay.
So all I can say is, I'm not aware, what I can say is this, that there's an existing lease extension that's in place right now, and what the owner has said to me is that the intent is either they coexist or they reach a mutual agreement that would terminate the lease through mutual agreement. But those are the 2 options that have been presented to me.
And let me
plainer language, they buy him out.
Yeah, buy him out.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they wasn't. Since you say you're hearing about this really for the first time and not had these discussions, and some of this comes as a surprise to you, would you like a deferral so you could try to reach a good neighbor agreement?
So a few things. One, if the committee would like to defer, that's something that is certainly something that we would not object very strongly to. What I'll mention is that the staff report includes provisos. Now, at the end of the day, one reason in terms of any communication between the ownership and the current tenant is that those, in a sense, are separate and apart from this conditional use process. This conditional use process, what we're here for today is simply, can there be a gas station in this C1, auto-oriented area, which evidently is master plan consistent, per staff review, and can there be, a conditional use for alcohol to be served in a place where alcohol already is served and has a non-conforming use and is also in a similar district. That's really that's all before us today, and so I guess I would submit that there's not really a big difference whether that conversation happens last week, this week, or next week, because that's not really what we're here for today, per se.
But we often do conditional use permits both for a gas station and alcohol. If I'm reading this correctly, we're being asked for both. We often do those because the neighborhood is in support.
Yeah, and one thing I'd point out is we've had 2 neighborhood meetings, an official MPP and another neighborhood meeting.
How about that from the Sherman company?
Both of which were with the Office of Neighborhood Engagement. And at those meetings, there were multiple parties involved. Neither meeting had necessarily high turnout. Each one had maybe 6 to 8 people that were there.
Well, I didn't mean to open this up into a discussion. Sorry,
Mr. Grandison.
I'd like an answer. Would you like a deferral in order to try to meet what they've said today?
If the commission would like a deferral, we're certainly fine with it. What I can say is this, and I actually proposed to them, you know, early in the day if they would like a deferral. It's something that we would be open to. And it was told me at the time that they would prefer to go forward, but that's what the commission would like, certainly. Again, what I would point out is that these conversations that would be had with the tenant are going to be had regardless of whether we have a deferral. So we're fine with it if that's what you would like, but we're going to have those conversations regardless. And I would also sort of like to point out a few things, which is that
hold on, Mr. Vice, before we do that, I'll ask that the audience members please hold your comments and respect the speaker that is actually speaking and any commissioner that asks any questions. So please hold all your comments and talk until I'm in the room. Thank you.
And also just to address the comment from the room, there is a record and a sign-in sheet for the MPP meeting. So if anybody wants to check, they're free to check the sign-in sheet and contact the persons who signed the sheet.
So I have a question, Mr. Brown. I know you say you wouldn't object strongly to a deferral, but I guess my question would be, it seems like most of the opposition to Park Burn is coming from the residents of Gus, which is giving me a little bit of concern. You know, should we defer? Would you use that time to work in good faith with the residents and try to
Absolutely, and I'll say two things. One, again, of the, you know, half a dozen or so people that were there, it was really only one group that expressed strong opposition, which was the Gus group. And as you can see, they're very strongly and well represented here, so I don't mean to minimize that in any sense. Two, I made it very clear from an initial call to Ms. Williams to the first pre-meet, informing about that to the MPP, and subsequent that I am perfectly happy to make have further discussions at any time, and actually would love to, and have, you know, offered that we would be willing to discuss anything from good neighbor agreement to anything else. So we've been very upfront about that from the beginning. We were told at the beginning that anything that involved alcohol sales, which included objection to the current operation at that time, so I'm a little caught off guard today, but anything that included alcohol sales or a gas station was going to be a flat no. So a lot of my overtures to have these conversations have not been met with necessarily open arms, but if they are open to it, I'm 100% open to it, yes.
I appreciate the fact that you're willing to consider a deferral. I will say this to the community who's here from Gus and you, if we do defer, that I hope that conversation will be reasonable, and also keep in mind the fact that we already have alcoholic sales at this location. There hasn't been tremendous objection that I've seen in terms of objection to alcohol sales at Danny's right now. And if something can be done so that fresh foods can still be made available, the only issue that I see on the table here is whether you may sell gas at this location, because there is actually already alcohol. And also maybe whether there will be a continuation of some of the fresh food initiatives that exist. So if we defer, I hope those meetings will take place in good faith. And I'm not inclined to view the fact of the existence of alcohol as a reason that people are going to hang at a particular location. They don't hang in front of Rite Aids and they'll hang in front of Walgreens just because there's alcohol. It has something to do with the provisos and the neighborhood that's working. So I hope that those discussions will take all those things that I said into account. And with that matter, since you and the community are open, I'd like to move for deferral of zoning docket number 1518 to the February.
Commissioner, right before you do that,
okay,
the speaker does actually have 2 more minutes.
Oh, you still want to rebut?
I'll be very quick. One, you mentioned...
You never had an opportunity to speak.
Okay. Okay.
You never had actually
you mentioned fresh fruit. As far as the brothers go, absolutely willing to commit to something along those lines. And 2, at the end of the day, like I said, we're here for what we're here for, right? And sometimes the waters get muddied by other conversations. And a lot of this seems to come down to the way that what we're discussing today comes down to a conversation between whether a certain occupant will occupy a space that is a tenant, or whether their landlord will be able to occupy the space, or whether they will be able to both operate the space with some community members asking that it just be the tenant. And when we back out of this just for a little bit, I understand how things will work from, you know, emotional levels, but if we back out from it and just say from a legal perspective, what are we really here for today? That's not really necessarily what the commission is here to speak to. And like I said, we are perfectly willing to be very clear, whether it be safety, whether it be, you know, doing extra things for security, whether it be extra things for loitering, extra things for trash. Yeah. As far as fresh foods, that's absolutely something that we're willing to commit to. Whether that happens right now or whether that happens at subsequent conversations, that's definitely something that we're all good with.
Thank you. The public hearing portion is actually closed, so we cannot address any more concerns. But I did notice your hand, but the public hearing portion is closed. So commissioners, do you have any comments, questions, or a form of a motion?
Mr. Chair, if there are no additional comments or questions, I move for the deferral of zoning docket 1518 to the second meeting in February.
And just to be clear, I want to make sure the applicant did request that deferral. Is that correct?
I take it you're asking because technically in order to have a deferral I need to ask for it?
Well, you don't, no, not unless it's a deadline issue, but just wondering, it's protocol usually, I mean not protocol, but practice that we ask that question.
Sure. Well, I think the applicant's best response is that what we would like to do is to defer to the request of the commission, and if the commission would like us to defer, we're absolutely 100% with that.
Thank you. There's a motion by Commissioner Green, second by Commissioner Hughes, for deferral to the February 27th meeting.
Yes. Yep. That's the date. February 16th.
All right, I don't know. Is that the official?
It's February 27th.
February 27th. The applicant is indicating you want February 6th. Mr. Grandison, do you prefer February 6th?
I think we probably prefer to, for the moment, say February 6th, and if we get into conversations with the neighborhood and they would like us to continue, we're making progress, and there's no reason why we can't extend to February 27th.
I'm open to amending my motion to make it for the deferral to the February 6th meeting.
Commissioner Hughes? There's a motion by Commissioner Green to move for deferral until February 6th, second by Commissioner Hughes. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Aye. State by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? So we have one.
No, I'm an aye.
Okay.
I'm really no.
So we have 5 in favor of the motion, 1 opposed, and that is Commissioner Steve. The motion passes for the deferral to February 6th. Zoning docket 01618.
The next item is zoning docket 16-18 for property located at 919-921 Jackson Avenue. This is a request for a zoning change from an HURB2 two-family residential district to an HUB1 historic urban neighborhood business district. The applicant has requested the zoning amendment in order to convert the property to a commercial short-term rental, which is disallowed under the existing zoning. The zoning district would allow a range of other small commercial uses, including restaurants, retail stores, and offices. The property is not eligible for commercial zoning under the master plans as it has no history of commercial use. Sanborn maps document a residential use on the site dating back to the late 19th century. The zoning change request would result in a loss of residential land and would not protect adjacent residential districts from the encroachment of incompatible non-residential uses into the interior of an established HURB2 district. In addition, the proposal would be a spot zone that is not allowable under the Commission's spot zoning policy. Therefore, the staff recommends denial of zoning docket 16-18.
Thank you. Speaker Bob Ellis, and we also have two people receiving time to use, so you have a total of 6 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening. This is a request for a zoning change to HB1 for the purpose of being able to operate a commercial short-term rental. I kind of feel like I should say the second verse sounds a lot like the first. We have a basic history of the property. In 2014, Mr. Christian Galvin purchased the property with the intent to build. Okay. In 2014, Mr. Christian Galvin purchased the building with the intent to build a super luxury rental for the Hollywood South. Is it still not working? Better? Better? I don't want to blast down there. So in 2014, Mr. Christian Galvin purchased the property for the intent to build a luxury rental for Hollywood South. To finance the extensive renovations, the funds originated from a combination of historic tax credits, bank loans, and income from the vacation rental at 1706. Essentially, the short-term rental income from 1706 was the way it was financed. Prior to it being purchased to Mr. Galvin, the family that had it before had it for 46 years. And during that time, the family worked in construction, concrete, and masonry, and his work is actually demonstrated all over the property. The owner installed the driveway, skimmed all the piers, poured concrete porch, installed concrete stairs, added brick columns and window enclosures, and actually constructed a large U-shaped brick building around the rear. All of these are examples to showcase to his customers his work. The back of the building was actually gutted for storage of equipment, and the first floor, which would be where your carports are on that picture, were actually a large workshop. So the building, when he bought it, was actually needed to be fully restored to a residential use, since it was essentially being a commercial outlet. When Hollywood South slowed down due to the tax credits being limited, vacation rentals became a necessary avenue to sustain the building. The neighborhood continues to evolve as a tourist corridor. The hop-on and hop-off buses and the blue bikes are stationed 1 block away, and the development of commercial businesses continue along the Jackson, Magazine, Chapatulas corridor. The location on Jackson puts it sandwiched in between the Magazine and Chapatulas commercial corridor, which the City Council recognizes a corridor in its own right, but when it approved the short-term rental, it's less than half a block away at 837 Jackson Avenue. One thing that we take, the property is now and is running as a short-term rental. It's currently has a temporary license which limits it to 90 days. Mr. Galvin was seeking to get the commercial status so that he could rent it for more days, and was willing to either have a proviso or even accept the report's suggestion that maybe he go to HUB1A zoning designation and specifically have the property only used for commercial short-term rental. When the neighborhoods evolve, they're not static, and the preferences change, and this property has been renovated since 2014 and has had no issues being a Hollywood South designation and now a vacation short-term rental. So with that, that's really all we have about the property.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers here in support? If not, we'll move to the opposition. If you're not here, we'll just keep going. Jenna Burke.
Jenna Peters, time that she said.
She asked me to read something. She had to go.
Are you speaking?
Yes, I'm also speaking.
You can speak, or you can speak for her. Either or.
Could I do both at the same time?
You can provide it in your 2 minutes. State your name.
Julie Simpson, 1332 Magazine. I'm here on behalf of the Coliseum Square Association as the zoning chairperson. We are opposed to this request. We believe that spot zoning such as this destabilizes residential property values, property taxes, and quality of life. Granting such an increase in zoning to commercial status would unfairly enable this property owner to monetize his property in ways that neighbors cannot. It may also have the effect of setting precedent and encouraging other commercial spot zoning requests on this street and in other residential areas. In fact, we are already seeing this in the Lower Garden District and other historic neighborhoods where tourists frequent. Finally, this request is in opposition to the CZO, which seeks to protect the residential character of our New Orleans neighborhoods, and for these reasons, we urge the City Planning Commission to recommend denial of this zoning change. On behalf of Jenna Burke, 903 6th Street, Irish Channel native, not speaking for any organization, only as a resident. This might be an even more ideal candidate for denial. This property is even more clearly nestled in the heart of a historic residential zone. I hope you were able to read the letter from the former assessor that he submitted. I wish I could be here to make this more clear with my tone and facial expressions, but this process has simply infuriated me. I don't have the same facial expressions. I refuse to be wholly misrepresented, and the tactics of these applicants speak to their clear lack of respect for the neighbors and neighborhood, as well as the civic process. Speaking again to this overall issue, I'd really like to have data on the number of STR spot zones currently in the pipeline. We know it might be difficult to sort, but it's important to know what we're facing. Again, we appreciate your consistent denials in accordance with the staff report.
Thank you. Catherine Love, Jacob Gardner, William Sutherland, Andrea Bland.
I'm here.
I gotta go too.
My name's Andrea Bland. I live at 1216 Jackson Avenue, just a couple of blocks from this residence. I have some experience with the legal rentals to the Hollywood market. Those all generally were legal because they were more than 1 month at a time. So setting something up as a legal rental, I understand that the business model, and many of the properties in the Garden District did do, and this corridor did do legal rentals of the old house for more than a month at a time. We're now in a very slippery slope here with those properties being converted to short-term rentals, other properties being purchased for the whole entire purpose of turning them into commercial short-term rentals. Please do not allow that to go forward. We're completely inundated in our neighborhoods with these short-term rentals. The density that it brings to the neighborhood in terms of traffic, partiers, people coming and going at all hours, it erodes the fabric of our neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that already gets a lot of tourists. There's a lot of pressure on this neighborhood. We get 5 million visitors a year in this little stretch of Jackson Avenue. It is a lot of intensity in our neighborhood just from visitors that come in, look at the beautiful houses, and then go back to the hotel. They reside in the neighborhood with their cars and their hours. It's just too intense. We're ruining the things that make New Orleans and our neighborhoods most special. So I'm here as a resident. I'm also here as a member of the Garden District Association, and Shelley Landrew had to leave and asked me to speak on her behalf as well. The entire Garden District Association is opposed to this zoning change. So please,
Thank you.
please do not.
Thank you so much. For the sake of time, we have about 2 more minutes before we have to leave. So I'm going to ask any speaker, if anyone else would like to speak in opposition, please come forward now. We have to walk hard and have some speakers. So if anyone else is speaking in opposition.
Yes, take a minute. Bill Sawicki, 2311 Chippewa Street, with the Irish Channel Neighborhood Association. I'm going to skip half of this since I've got a minute. What I do want to say is I appreciate the eloquence of Commissioner Isaacson and his smart comment earlier about sending a consistent message. There are so many short-term rental spot zoning requests out there, it's making our heads spin. We all agree that we need better neighborhood engagement on important issues like this, but the system's not making it easy for the neighbors to get involved. The MPP meetings are usually done during the week, as was the case here. The CPC and City Council hearings also held during the week are long and unpredictable. How are working people supposed to engage in a process when the process is stacked against them? I hear this complaint from my neighbors over and over again. The applicants and their lawyers all get paid regardless of when these meetings occur, but the working citizen has to get time off of work to come to these meetings. It would be nice for that to change. And whether through malintent or just sloppiness, this applicant certainly didn't help the process. The notification letter sent to neighbors listed 2 different dates for their MPP meeting. Upon holding the MPP meeting, the applicant modified at least one of the comment cards prior to submitting it for the vote. No wonder it's difficult to get ordinary citizens to engage in the process. And it's also why you end up getting the same 6 people speaking at these meetings. We're the only ones who can get here. As a board member of a neighborhood association, I'd like you to consider modifying the process to make it more citizen-friendly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers in opposition? please can you hold it to 1 minute?
Absolutely, I'll be very brief. My name is Joshua.
We might have to move for deferral.
My name is Joshua Johnston, 922 Jackson Ave. I didn't hear any other renters speak, so I wanted to speak on behalf of us renters. After all these Airbnbs, especially after this one went in, I mean, my rent has gone up about 3 times in the last 2 years. My landlord specifically referenced reasons being the higher values gotten by some of these other properties. The applicant does not deserve a special exception. They've shown a repeated to use these terms in ways that are false assertions based on their face. I mean, that this, because a man who owned it, did work on it and showed off his work, that it becomes some sort of a factory showroom. I mean, that doesn't meet any basic reasonable test of logic. I may be mistaken. I thought that the original permit was for an LCC in this property. I'm not sure if they want to respond if this was a corporation that owned this property earlier, or if they might become a corporation again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
If not, the applicant has time for rebuttal. Please limit it to a minute and a half.
I will do my best. Eric Torres, RJLS Law Firm. We did have a typographical error on the MPP. We had someone out there on both dates. No one showed up on the wrong date, so that is a little disingenuous of an argument. This is a very emotional issue, and I've heard a lot of emotional things, and we're just trying to make a living. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, public
Yes, the public hearing portion is closed.
I would
Commissioner
like
Hughes.
to move denial of staff's recommendation.
It's been moved for denial by Commissioner Hughes, second by Commissioner Steve.
Thank you, and I'd just like to say, I think we have to be consistent here, whether it's a nice young guy doing carpeting, whatever, we're just not gonna rezone so that people can turn things into short-term rental, so I support it.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
One other issue.
No, I think,
the public hearing portion is closed. So, with that being said, any more comments or discussions by any commissioners? If not, I'll call a question. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Real quickly, deposition 00118.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it very short. Consideration of the sale of Front Street right-of-way between Lion Street, Upper Lion Street, Square 78, and the New Orleans Public Belt Railroad in the 6th Municipal District. Staff recommends approval, subject to 2 provisos.
Thank you so much. The applicant speaking in support, Mr. Philip Sherman.
Philip Sherman, 11 Winter Street. I'll be real quick. I know you're trying to get out of here. I was just here to answer any questions. Thank you all for hearing this.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else speaking in support? Is there anyone else speaking in opposition to this zoning, to this property, this position?
Yes, we have to leave.
If not, the property disposition public hearing portion is actually closed.
I move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Steve for approval, second by Commissioner Hughes. All in favor, please vote.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. The last document that we have is a street name change 00118.
Mr. Chair, this is a request to consider the naming of a section of Press Street between Charter Street and St. Claude Avenue to be changed to Homeland Security Way. Staff finds that generally the request meets the criteria for approval. We do make one recommended modification based on a 2015 City Planning Commission study proposing an honorary street name change process where the suffix way would be reserved for honorary street names rather than a permanent street name as is being proposed. So staff recommends modified approval to change the name to Homer Plessy Street.
Thank you so much. We have one person speaking in support of the street name change, and that is Keith Plessy.
My name is Keith Plessy. I live at 8435 Princeton Place. I'm in total support of this street renaming. The applicant was yearning for this street to be renamed, and I agree totally with the word street placing.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else seeking in support? Is there any opposition to this street name change? Is there any opposition to the street name change? If not, the public hearing portion is actually closed, and the chair will entertain a motion from one of the commissioners.
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Steve, for modified approval. Correct?
First, I'm not so sure that we have a quorum. Okay.
I move to accept the staff's recommendations and modify.
Second. Was already second?
It's second by Commissioner.
I'm sorry.
You have a question?
Yeah, I just have a comment to Mr. Plessy, especially, actually as we celebrate the 300 year history of our city, what Mr. Plessy did back in 1896. In fact, he was only 25 years old when he was asked by the Citizens Committee to put himself at risk to get on a train and knowing that he would be arrested because they, in fact, wanted him to be arrested so that this could get viewed at a higher level. It was a terrible decision by the Louisiana Supreme Court, a terrible decision by the United States Supreme Court, and it put us into 458 years of additional segregation, which led to a lot of tragedies, terrorism, lynchings, and other things in our city. But I want to just say to you as a family member that we greatly appreciate the work of Homeland Plessy. And the fact is that he could have really laid low and just gone about his life. He was not even someone who was recognized as being African American. He could have not put himself out there to do what he did. And I just want to say that as we named this street, and I'm kind of sorry it's the last item on the agenda, but maybe it's significant that it's the last item on the agenda to give enough emphasis. But I and my family and those who are in our city who understand this have got to say that what he did was very commendable, and we appreciate his sacrifice.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Green. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, state by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? If not, the motion is carried. The last matter on the agenda is the approval of the CPC minutes from January 9, 2018. Second, we moved by Commissioner Hughes. Second by Commissioner Green. I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? The motion is carried. All right, move for
Only if Stephen can. I will put in the card. Okay, good. I'm glad I was able to help you out with some candy. Thank you. You're welcome. I always have a stash of I have a sip of empty back to the farmer. So jealous of colleagues. I was like, I won't sell always check with me.
So it's very delicate. It's very delicate. And it's movable art. It's kinetic.
Oh, thank you, James. Can I unplug this?